That's Steven's favorite line.
What's that?
Keep it in your pants, buddy.
Oh wait, that's
Every time I try to talk at all before the podcast.
That's like
Steven.
that TikTok.
Keep it in your
The
pants.
TikTok you shared. It's like, where's all the white people with their phrases?
Oh, that is a great
Beat
video.
it, twerp.
Dude, I love that video. I love black humor. Like, it's a huge thing for me.
Wait, was it a black guy making fun of white people's?
He wasn't making fun.
Oh.
He was actually like celebrating all of the great phrases of white people over the generations. And he was filing a complaint. He was like, where have you been? There's been no innovation, like nothing.
Yeah, the kids are saying
Like,
weird stuff now.
I don't give a rat's ass. And he's like, I love that. Rat's ass. Like,
Get a grip.
get a grip, pal. You know?
What does it mean? Where did it come
And
from?
he listed out all these amazing phrases. And he's like, where are you at? I love that kind of humor. I love it so much.
Eric, you're back
Anyway,
on the OG.
can I open my pants now? Now that the pod started?
I don't know if that's the term, but
That's not a good term. We're not bringing that back.
nobody's ever said that.
All right, Armand promised he was coming in hot today.
Yeah.
After a haircut, and your cut looks fresh.
Thanks.
Along with alcohol.
Yes.
Fresh
So
cut.
What did you?
Couple
What did you bring here?
nice, I call them value bottles. You know, it's like you go to a party, you never go wrong with these bottles. We got the Pessimist and we got the Austin Hope.
Oh,
And you
Austin
just,
Hope, is that
you
really
know,
a true value bottle?
No, no,
It
it's
is.
Their,
Well,
it's their down.
It's their like $28.
Austin.
It's their it's their $28 version.
That thing's $28 now.
Yeah.
Holy inflation!
Yeah. Has a 4.1 on Vivino, I will have you know.
Jesus, that used to be sub $20.
Is Vivino the alpha? It's like
I like Vivino. I talked about that alpha I had from that wine connoisseur one time,
That other
seller
app you showed
tracker,
me, I don't like.
but I can't use it.
It's like
It's
it's useless to me.
it's too hard to use. So I went back to Vivino.
You just want the review. You just like want to feel like you're being guided.
Yeah, and I want to take a picture of it. And
Like
I
all of your decision making is like the difference between like a 0.1 on the scale.
totally. Dude, 4.0 is my cutoff. I can't go 3.9 anymore. I can't do it.
There's just no way there's a difference.
Yeah, I know. No, but it's good. It's good collective, you know, alpha.
It's the same
like
thing on
it. I like
Amazon. The same
reviews.
thing on Amazon. Once it dips below the
What's your threshold?
oh Amazon, it has to be 4.
Oh God, I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't touch anything below 4.3.
What
On
are you
Amazon?
guys even
No
talking
way.
about?
No way. I don't dip below 4.4 usually.
It's the review inflation on Amazon is getting really bad. Like now it's just like.
By the way, I hate to break it to you
4.4?
guys.
Reviews
but
are fake.
Yeah, reviews are fake on Amazon.
I know that's like the whole. That's the whole. Reviews are fake everywhere. That's why this whole thing
Yeah.
is so funny. But like we know they're fake. Like we know they're fake. They know that we know that they're fake, and yet like we still just.
The funny thing is, Amazon knows they're fake. So like, why don't they get rid of them?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
infuriating.
We know they're fake. They know that we know they're fake. We know that they know that we know that they're fake, and then we still read them.
Yes.
That's a what is that quote? What is that quote?
Well,
That's like a thing, right?
I don't know.
It's the lying thing. I think that was some Soviet
Well-
shit.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they know. We know.
Anyway.
Our sponsor, everyone knows, Zbotics. Let's give a shout out to them. Zbotics.com/alfalfa. Go there and check out the pre-alcohol drink. You can get 15% off when you use the code alfalfa at checkout. Let's see what's coming up. St. Patrick's Day.
Mushi's birthday.
Oh, that's a big one.
Okay,
you should
sorry.
get some more Zbotics for Mushi's birthday.
No rage.
St. Patrick's Day is like a big drinking day.
It's in March, right?
Yeah, so that's coming up.
Yeah.
I think that's a good reason to acquire some Zbotics. As a reminder, Zbotics is the genetically pre-engineered probiotic that gets rid of that nasty toxin.
Acetaldehyde.
Yep, it's that, not dehydration that makes you feel like shit in the morning. So yeah, you take it before you start drinking. I like to take it maybe 2 hours before and let it seep in there in the gut. Get ready for all that acetaldehyde to get rid of. And yeah, you'll have a healthier morning. Get back to your workout, get back to work, whatever you want to do. So yeah, thanks Zbotics for sponsoring the pod. And remember guys, use code alfalfa at checkout. Thanks guys.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All All right, we got a bunch of stuff to go over on the Trello
stuff.
here.
Do it, buddy.
What do we want to do first? I think we should get into this quick one. Someone burns millions in ETH to blow whistle on Chinese brain hacking. Let's see. Let's put this up on the screen. And in this thread, is there the message that they posted in there?
I didn't know we identified who burned it. That's
See if you can scroll down to the
lazy?
actual message. Okay.
It's up. You scroll past it. It's
I
right
did.
there.
Where?
It's right
Oh,
there.
this
right
message.
in front
Yeah.
of
That one?
Yeah.
That's not it.
it's in the text. Oh no.
not
Yeah.
it.
There is a new mode of crime.
So while these guys look for it,
This is the message.
That was the first message from 7 days ago. There's multiple messages.
Oh, there is multiple
Yes.
messages. Okay, that's why I'm confused. So anyway, someone burnt a bunch of ETH, and they put a message in the transaction. So they sent it to the burn address, and it was about $1.5 million worth of ETH, I think, over time. And they said, first, there is a new mode of crime in which the victim is gradually deprived of his desires until he becomes a complete slave to the digital machine. Another message says, as brain computer interfaces and mind reading technology advances, a new crime is emerging where even wild animals are turned into digital slaves. And then it finishes off, I think, with the CEOs of Quande Investment, and it names their names, have used brain computer weapons to persecute all company employees, even they themselves are being controlled. So it looks like someone sent a plea for help, got control of some company private keys, and just lit a bunch of money on fire as a cry for help.
It's a good way to get attention.
It's a good way to die. This person's 100% dead.
Oh, they had to know that.
Yeah, they're murdered.
I mean, they were already dead
For
anyway.
sure.
They apparently had a brain worm.
They're facing brain weapons.
Do you buy this?
I mean, based on the dollar value, yeah. Yeah, you could have a crazy person or just someone at work who's just flipped their shit.
I mean, it's pretty wild. It's some Black Mirror shit.
Yeah, it is.
It does feel like something the Chinese would be doing.
It would.
It's an expensive message.
Which obviously wasn't his money, right? He burnt probably this firm's money.
It's one of the best ways to advertise because somebody's like, hey, somebody just burned millions of dollars.
You wouldn't keep
What is
a
this?
few ETH for yourself?
It sounds like they donated a bunch to WikiLeaks. They donated like 5 million to WikiLeaks. Burn 1.6.
Oof. Okay.
I mean, it's pretty weird. You guys feel like there's all these kind of red flags going off all over the world, and maybe we're ignoring a bunch
airplanes
of stuff.
crashing?
It's it feels like there might. Did you see? There's now a 3% chance that the asteroid kills us all.
And it keeps ticking up a notch every
Bro,
week.
somebody on my Twitter, they had the 3% thing, and then they quote tweeted, and then they put a poker board up, and it was aces versus 4-5 suited on or 5-6 suited on an ace 2, an ace 3-4 board or something, and I was like, oh, I understand this. I was like, we've got backdoor.
How many years? Isn't it
straights outs to end?
It's enough time where we could
end
build
the
a
world.
laser that would shoot this thing out of the sky or something?
Yeah. I mean, we are complacent, is there anything that could happen where we would be like, oh, this is a big deal?
What's the
We've
date
ignored
again?
actual. What's that?
Date of impact?
It's by
2032?
2032.
I think.
Yeah, singularity happens before then. We'll be fine.
See, complacency.
But shouldn't we build a backup laser in the meantime?
AI solves this.
Hmm.
ASI, baby.
Are we the complacent generation?
We'll have AGI in 1 to 2 years. We'll have ASI by 2030. We'll be fine.
What's
Next
that movie?
topic.
Don't Look Up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't look up.
We're
Yeah.
doing Don't Look Up,
Yeah.
and we're not looking up.
Well, that movie was too much of a political statement, but it is true.
Isn't that kind of the
The
meta
message
point of
was
the movie
true.
as well, though?
Yeah.
It's like an emotional roller coaster for me. That movie.
Yeah.
I never saw it. Was it good?
Yeah, I thought it was I don't remember it specifically, but I remember being like, oh, that was good.
It's good. It's just highly politicized.
I
Like, they're
remember-
digging at the right.
I don't
hard.
think so.
It,
I remember thinking it wasn't as
insists
political as people
upon
made it out to
itself.
be. It was just like a normal movie. I thought it was just like a fine.
You're too chill. You're too chill to see all the little digs that just
Maybe.
moved through you, like little particles.
Yeah, it was
I don't
good
know.
though.
Cam called Don't Look Up, and Alan Bryce says Aerosmith solves this.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Oh, I just got it.
I don't get it.
It's
Okay, Armageddon.
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 Oh, and they play the
Bruce,
Aerosmith
Bruce
song.
Willis.
Animal Crackers solved this.
We need a hero.
Deep cut.
My God.
The world needs a hero.
I can't remember if that movie was actually good, but I
was
definitely
so
have
good. That
fond
movie's
memories of it.
epic. Are you
Okay,
kidding
Fond
me? It's
memories of
classic.
It is good.
90s.
Just don't rewatch it. Probably.
Yeah, I would never rewatch it. I wouldn't want to ruin it. I'm also never going to rewatch Independence Day.
I think Armageddon holds up. I would love to watch that again.
Yeah.
We used to make
I
these
think
like kind of
most
like
90s,
awesome, dumb,
early
patriotic
2000s,
movies.
early 2000s, 90s movies are
Such a quaint
awesome.
time.
you never. We're never going to get movies like that again. Like they're
We
just
should do one of those for movie night.
relics. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We can't because Yaniv doesn't want to watch anything that's like earlier than 2000.
95 or 2000. Oh,
18.
he said 2000. Yeah.
Our buddy puts on an epic movie night, and by him I mean his girlfriend, who themes up the whole place, has all the movie snacks you could possibly imagine, including the Z-Biotics, including a movie-themed cocktail of the
Yeah.
evening. It's amazing. Yeah,
right.
and the sound system is epic as well.
But unfortunately,
I just want to make sure our movie nights sound a little masculine.
we can't watch
and
any of the
interesting,
classics.
not like
They're not.
four guys cuddled around a
Yeah.
TV.
They're very, very not masculine. Couldn't be more feminine, to be honest.
All right, so from some burning money on fire to collecting money, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. And Armand, you probably you haven't heard this one yet. We're pretty pro Trump policies, I'd say, for the most part. So I got something that maybe we might not like, and I feel it's good. It's a good balancing the act. So this Wall Street Journal article has it's an exclusive where they kind of tally up the different ways that the Trump family has been collecting cash, basically the grift, along this whole time. So one of the ways is that Melania had a documentary she's been trying to sell, and her documentary is going to be about her going back into the White House, and kind of probably redecorating it, but also kind of coming back with like more confidence because she didn't know what was going on the first time. And anyway, she couldn't sell the documentary. Trump wins, and it magically gets sold for $40 million. But it's not only that, it's that Netflix and Apple didn't even bid. Paramount offered $4 million. Disney offered $14 million. So why was the winning bid $40 million? Like, why was it like 3 times higher than the next closest bid? And you could argue it's just a way to like funnel money to the incoming
those
president.
bids that didn't come or did come that were less came after they were elected,
Yes.
and then suddenly there's a $40 million
Yeah.
bid. By who?
By Amazon.
By Amazon. They just have money to light on fire.
And, you can make the argument that obviously Amazon deal is just one way that Amazon can benefit from, having Trump in office. Okay, so that's one. Oh, and then they were also selling like producer sponsorships in the thing on top of the $40 million. So like they were hawking it to people who were at the inauguration, being like, hey, for $2 million, we'll put you at the end of the credits and we'll invite you to the premiere. So it's like they're scraping every little $1 million here, $1 million there they can get. Okay, the next one is even more interesting. So this whole time, like in the last 3 or 4 years, Trump has been filing these defamation lawsuits against like every media company. So X, Facebook, ABC, and after he got elected, these have all been magically settled. So in fact, like X has been paid $10 million directly to Trump after this is all done. Probably no surprise, whatever, they're buddies. They came to an agreement, picked a number, paid it to him. The Mark Zuckerberg one is a little more interesting. So Zuckerberg basically had to make a trip out there to Mar-a-Lago, and Trump, quote unquote, said, we need to settle this if you want everything to be kumbaya moving forward. And he's basically saying, like, if you want us, like the United States of America and Meta, to have a good relationship, you need to pay me. And they did. I think they settled for, I'm looking for the number in the article, I think it came out to $25 million, which goes directly either to Trump himself or the Trump library, which I imagine is some kind of like fund that you can kind of use in various ways. And then they kind of go on to Disney paid $15 million in the weeks after the election to resolve a defamation suit. So all these are getting like solved in a way that's beneficial to them. CBS News has an ongoing one, obviously. Then they talk about the merch, which I don't think anyone's surprised about that. They've always been selling merch, so you're just selling more of it. And they even asked, Don Jr., hey, like, are you going to continue to like sell product? He's like, yeah, this time I'm not going to be shy about it, because last time I did everything right and no one gave me like credit for it. I actually kept the family business separate. And now, like, why would I if I'm not getting credit for doing that?
I should have bought the shoes.
The funny thing is that they have like one line about the meme coin in which he made the most amount of money in this article. Yeah. And it just goes on, like the different ways that they're collecting cash on the side and continue to. So anyway,
I don't know. I feel like I need a better reason to dislike what they're doing. How is it different than like Michelle Obama or any presidential family like doing a book deal?
typically they do that either
After.
before, leading up to as like a nominee, and then after.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing was like, yeah, of course they're like, you know, of course there's grift. I'm just curious if it changes any of your guys' opinion that there's like clear evidence.
Defamation lawsuits are being settled because they won, and if they hadn't won, they wouldn't have gotten settled.
But they didn't. Oh yeah, if he didn't win the presidency.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, none of this is
It's just like
illegal.
All right, I don't want to really have a problem with the president. Let's move on. And $10 million is nothing in comparison to like what's possible if we're collaborative with each other. And then the selling of merch, and I mean the meme coins thing is the one that was the most. The Melania coin was the thing that fucked it all. Right.
Right.
Like that's the one I'm like, that was stupid.
Because even as like a shareholder of Meta, you know, like I guess like shareholders are like burdening that cost. But I'm also thinking like, fuck it, like pay it and let's get on the good side.
It's
of the
only
government.
$25 million to pay off the
absolutely.
president.
$25 million is like some engineer's bonus, dude.
Yeah, pay it.
Steven, does it change anything for you, or just kind of business as usual in politics?
No, I didn't think Trump was going to come into office and not grift. Like, I didn't vote for the guy because he wasn't a grifter. Like, I know he's a grifter. like everybody in politics grifts. Like, how is Elizabeth Warren worth like $20 million, right? It's all a grift, right? Like Trump's grift is kind of funny because it's just like not it's not like the Clinton grift, right? Where you set up these like fucking foundations, you do all this like crazy shit, and you just funnel yourself. Like this is just like I'm making a meme.
No,
like,
I've always.
I made a movie.
You're
buy
making
it.
such a good point. I think it's so important to distinguish between like plain sight grifting and backdoor cons. And like politicians are notorious, like Nancy Pelosi and Elizabeth Warren or whoever, for extracting and taking advantage of a position in order to accumulate wealth. But it's done in ways that are like backdoor, behind the scenes, with a presentation of I'm such a good person and I would never do such a thing. But then if you dig and you open up the closet, you find all of this garbage and you find all of these like weird activities. Whereas the Trump family just does it right in front of your face. And people rightly are like more able to make a statement about like, this is wrong, this is bad, this is this, this is that. But like everybody's doing the same thing, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you had Hunter Biden selling his artwork for like $300,000 or some shit, right? Like this is not like a. Everybody does this. It's gross. It's gross all around. I don't know how to solve the problem, right? Because with somebody like the president, with the amount of power they have, for some corporation to even write them like $100 million check is like a rounding error in most instances. With like what they can do to put their thumb on the scale in particular things. Like, I don't know how to solve that problem because we can't like ask these people to be like upstanding moral people, because the route to get to the presidency, you have to be like a degenerate psychopath to even get there in the first place. Like no upstanding individual would endure like the decades of torture and like absolute just shitstorm you have to go through to even become president these days. So it's just like, what are we expecting the people at the other end of this like shit slide to look like? They're just look like Biden, they look like Trump, they look like Pelosi, they look like like what else are you gonna get? Like, how do we fix that?
Yeah, like everybody's playing the same game in a sense, is to get closer and closer to power, aka the money printer. We talked about this 2 years ago, probably, where it's like the closer you are to the money printer, like you have a serious advantage here to accumulate wealth in ways without breaking the law. And who in their right mind like wouldn't take advantage for themselves and the people closest to them, as long as you're within the confines of the law? And so the deeper question is like, well, maybe the system is wrong and we need to change something there. And as you said, like, I don't have an answer. I don't either. But I can tell you, like, for example, look at the trade that Elon made. The donations that Elon made were one of the greatest trades I have ever, you know, everyone's, oh, Armand fucking loves Elon. No. Listen, the trade that Elon made of donating tens of millions of dollars in exchange for billions of value long-term, one of the greatest trades any human being, it is the greatest trade any human being has ever made. I actually would love to know like what a better investment was. Remarkable investment and ROI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Saylor.
Yeah.
Michael Saylor, probably the best investment of all time.
Yeah. That's a good one.
This is just an indictment of how like the entire political system has gone awry from how it was originally designed, because the president was supposed to just be like not that important of a office, right? It wasn't supposed to be rolling in, making State of the Unions like some monarch, right? It was just supposed to be just another office, right? So in that world where the president doesn't have that much power, as like they probably shouldn't have, yeah, there's not a lot of incentive for people to write these like crazy checks or do whatever, because they can't do that. Like the fact that these people think it's like worthwhile to write tens of millions of dollars in checks is a sign that the person holding that office, they have too much power. Like that person shouldn't have that much power. None of these people should have that much power.
What do you think about this? I saw this discussion in our Discord about like there was a debate happening about is there a shift toward like a dictatorship, or is it actually like a monarchy sort of rule and law? I don't know if you saw it. It was Ledger, I believe, in our Discord that was like initiating this and talking about this shift toward like Trump the monarch and how democracy has been broken for far too long, and that this could be a positive trade-off. What do you think about that?
So I think that there's two things here. Like on the one hand, I don't want a bunch of power for the executive. On the other hand, the executive branch, all the stuff that's within the purview, like that should just be the president's purview. Like the president should be able to go in, fire anybody who wants, and just run the executive branch. Like the fact that people are up in arms because like he's like firing AGs or whatever, like he runs all of those people. Like that's like his purview. The president should have his like purview, right? And for decades, you know, we've been creating like all of these organizations, bureaucracies, whatever you want to call them, that sort of are just like existing like outside the realm of Congress, and they're like nestled under here. And it's cool when somebody you like has like control of that. It's like cool if you have like an Obama or a Biden, right? But then once you've given all the power to Trump, and then he uses all the power you've given to him, it's just like, okay, you crying over spilled milk at this point. Like you made your bed, now you got to lay in it. So I don't have a problem with the president like exercising control over the executive branch. I am a little wary of the monarchy, dictatorship thing, whatever you want to call it. But there's this other thought I have in my head, which is just like, okay, like if you imagine a hypothetical scenario, which might even not be hypothetical, it might be literally what's happening right now. Like imagine a scenario where the entire structure of government has just gotten so fucked, right? You've built up all this bureaucratic infrastructure that just completely exists outside the where the people of the country have any sort of say or vote. It's this like infrastructure that just like persists over time, does its own thing. You can never get rid of it. Is it okay in that instance to have like a benevolent dictator-esque figure come in and just like slash it up, burn it all to the ground? If know how do you ever reverse what happened. Like I understand how this can go awry if the power goes too far in the other direction, but like honestly, what do you do? Like, what is the alternative? Like, if you believe that infrastructure has just gotten completely out of hand, as I believe it has.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting going back to the grift and if you like the president or the leader or not. But like, if you look at the Sultan of Brunei, he is so ostentatiously opulent. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I think he has like a gold-plated 747 or something. Like,
He was a benevolent dictator, right?
yeah, he's a benevolent, and people know that he uses the people's money for his own like lavish, luxurious lifestyle, and they're like, yeah, we're doing all right. We're kind of doing all right ourselves. So
So
like,
as long as he makes everybody's life better, it's okay that he breaks off a little for himself.
according to the people of Brunei,
I think that's fair.
I mean, I feel like you could make an argument that the president should be like the most highly paid person in the entire world.
gets
They
paid.
definitely shouldn't be paid like $250,000 a year. Or
It
whatever
is ridiculous to pay
$500,000
politicians like $100K and then expect them to not
Not take
corrupt.
money.
riff.
I'm glad.
Like,
I'm glad
it
you.
doesn't make any sense.
That was Nick's point like 6 months ago.
Remember
on
on
an
the
episode.
Singapore model.
Yeah, the Singapore model,
Yeah.
like pay senators and
$1 million a year.
and congressmen $1 million a year, so that you attract you track the people who are going into
Top tier.
finance or tech or AI and be like, yeah,
But it's like teachers. Like you want to attract the best teachers, like pay 6 figures baseline.
well, along with that, right? I think we said, I think this was like an episode just you and I where we went over this, but you have to pay them a lot and then you have to crack the whip, like public lashings if you steal from the purse.
Yeah, there has to be a big stick at the end of that to whack
Yeah.
them over the head with, which I'm in favor of.
Sounds great.
Right? Like I'm in favor of like overpaying these people. I wish there was a world where you could like pay them in a performance-based way, but like I don't know how the hell you would ever.
You grow GDP above 3%. You just unlocked $1 billion.
Yeah,
for
they're
yourself.
gonna game the shit. They'll just like, fucking print money on their way out the door, and like, it's the next guy's problem. I'm collecting my bonus on the way out. Like, you could obviously see how that goes awry, and you also can't like have these like unreasonable standards where you like have to divest from everything you own, because you're not gonna like attract any like the great people.
No.
So you have to figure out how to find this balance of compensating people for their brilliance, but then also like not pushing away like the best people you have with like these like undue burdens that and standards people can't.
I mean, I think they should get really high salaries. Like, maybe $400,000 is enough for the presidents. There are cases in which presidential families have left office and been almost essentially broke, because like when they need to do private stuff, the government technically can't pay for it, but they still need Secret Service and transportation and all of this. So there's been cases where
Oh, you mean like after they're
done,
term,
and they even
yeah.
raised the salary. They Obama made Secret Service protection for life for all presidents because they were trying to like lift the office into more dignity. Like when you're a retired president, like you should live with some kind of dignity. We shouldn't have like
I agree.
a homeless prior president, right?
But what is the downside of paying the president like $10 million a year, and when they leave office, just paying them like $2 million a year for life, and then forbidding them from doing any deals, or pay them $10 million a year for life? Like, who the fuck cares? Like, it's like a rounding error in our budget, and be like, no paid speaking gigs, no nothing. Like, just completely remove any chance of tainting anything. Like, you do nothing. You take nothing. You do nothing improprietous, but here's $10 million a year forever.
Right. You can give them COLA adjustments on that $10 million.
I don't know. Like, but yeah, like there's gonna be like, what if your wife produces a documentary and somebody buys it for $1 billion? It's just like you have to have like a whole board that kind of goes over this shit. It's just like a hard problem because your influence is just so outsized in terms of like what you can do versus like the market rate for bribing people.
Yeah.
And like the impact, it is such a gnarly problem.
So my concern, like with the family and with the new powers that be, is not the grifting. It's the power itself. And when you have like what we were living in, which is just like an executive branch that was essentially non-existent. You had a puppet figure and a shadow government and potentially this deep state and all this stuff, and nothing happening, and people not feeling like there was progress. And now you have somebody taking ownership of the position, exercising the powers that have been given to them, making decisions, just doing. And you can disagree with what the decisions are, but the fact is that there's lots and lots of action and doing by this administration. Okay, that's like not debatable. But the problem with that is, I'm okay with like a move toward like more power and monarchy, but with that power can come a new type of corruption. The corruption that existed before was intangible and difficult to put your finger on, and you had to be a Marty and do so much research to understand what was going on, what is going on beneath the surface, to really understand like where are the layers of corruption in this onion. Now you have corruption oftentimes happening and these grifts happening right on the surface. But as power accumulates by the technocracy, I am a techno-optimist, and I do think that it's positive that Silicon Valley is now involved in decision-making in the U.S. government. I think it's wonderful that anybody who's known anybody that works in the government knows how slow the systems are, how outdated the technology is, how much a person like David Sachs can bring value.
Did you hear the Mineshaft story?
No.
Oh my God.
But like, tell me, but like, you bring technology, you bring innovation, you bring sprinting, like just generally getting things done. That's all positive. The concerning part is like, power corrupts. I think that's just like a law of human nature. And as we've seen, all things exist on a pendulum. So the pendulum was swung in one direction, and now it's shifting toward the other direction. Nobody ever shows up and is like the Buddha and is just perfectly living the Tao and gives us a system that is just so perfect and holy and finds the middle way and is just balancing act. Never happens. What happens is a new power comes in with a promise for something completely different, runs in the opposite direction until it hits a threshold. The threshold gets hit and hit and hit until people and the system say, I've had enough, and initiate a new form of government and a new leader to drive that new way forward, which will swing the pendulum completely in the opposite direction. And that's what's happening right now, and that's what we have to be mindful of as citizens, as people, is that like, don't just like give it all up and assume that just because it's your guy in power that it's all going to go according to your plan. Eventually, it bites you in the ass, just like it did before. Just like when you thought you were a virtue signaling good person, it ends up biting you in the ass because you're the person that gets canceled. Many people found that out the hard way. We're going to find out the same thing moving in the other direction. There will be people that lose, that don't benefit from this system as power accumulates in this opposite direction. And that's just a law. I think that's just how it works.
What power do you see being seized right now?
Well, I think the concerns are clear. Like, people are just concerned that a certain class of citizen is going to lose, and a certain other class of people is going to accumulate more power and more wealth. And there's this representation that working class people are going to win alongside the Silicon Valley elites. But I think in the end of the day, like, somebody has to lose, and then exercise and control of technology over certain groups of people. And will the technologies that replace human labor catch up fast enough to replace the jobs? And there's real concerns with like what happens in these systems. We're also laying off a lot of people, and we need to give them jobs, and we need to move quickly.
Okay, but like, are there any new powers being seized that you see, or is this a continuation? Like one of the problems when you don't live in a free market society, right, is like when you create a lot of regulation, all this red tape, you end up in a situation where the government kind of picks winners and losers in the market. So do you see like new power being accumulated and taken, or do you see the same power to pick winners and losers being used to just pick new winners and new losers?
I think it's new power.
Which new power is there?
Well, just this new group of, robber barons, modern day robber barons potentially. There's a group of elite people that are accumulating power, that are closest to Trump and closest to the money printer, and they'll win. They're going to win. And the question will just be, will they maintain virtue along the way? And all I'm sending is an early warning sign.
I get it. I'm just trying to drill into like the power that they're seizing. Because if the power is influence, like haven't there are billionaires on the left influencing,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You could argue there's more billionaires on the left.
You could. I don't know if I will. But
Corby says really good points about in plain sight versus shadow grifting. False says completely disagree with the paying politician stuff. Government service should just be that, a service. It should be an honor. Unfortunately, our society/government is broken, and all we value is money.
so idealistic of you, False.
Yeah.
It's hard to live in a world where you sort of devalue patriotism and then you expect people to want to like serve their country. It's a bit of a
All right. Well, can we talk about the actual richest person in the world?
Yes, I see what you did there.
I want to talk about the actual richest person. in the
Satoshi
world.
Nakamoto.
Oh my!
You mean Jack
God.
Dorsey?
Is Satoshi Nakamoto the actual richest person in the
He
world?
owns I think it's 5% of the float. So
Oh, that's
5%
not the
of
richest
two-
person. It's 100 billion?
100 billion. He's up there, but he's not.
there's someone who's worth more than $100 billion.
Yeah, Elon's
Yeah,
worth like
Elon.
200 billion.
Yeah, but
plus.
doesn't Jack Dorsey probably own a lot of Square, a lot of?
Not
He
that
probably
much.
Wait.
got like paid out for Twitter quite a bit.
I mean, Bernard Arnault.
Sorry to
is
real-time
over
fact
100
check you.
billion.
No, I appreciate it. Oh, shit. Elon is worth $400 billion.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's the greatest trade of all time.
Fucking nuts,
400 billion.
Oh, man. I thought for sure. I thought it was like,
I feel like he was,
34
I feel
billion.
like he was like 200 billion like 3 weeks ago. You know?
oh,
It's
dear,
crazy.
dear God.
Okay.
Okay.
So
It's a
I
couple
just
hundred
had this-
billion among
I had this
friends.
crazy question. Can I ask it?
Yeah.
Okay. You know how Elon was like, a point against Elon potentially. Like, you know how like Elon was like, civilization is on the line. Like everything is on the line if Trump doesn't win. Was it really just that he was on the line?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, of course. He's
Like what would his net worth be right now if Kamala had won?
A lot
proper
less.
fucked.
A lot less.
A lot less.
He would have lost the 50 million that he invested in Trump or whatever it was, and his net worth would have dropped by 50%.
Those Twitter bonds would not
Great
have gone
trade,
for
man.
97
Great
cents on the
fucking
dollar.
trade. He was sweating at the poker table.
All right. I still got to get this out.
Get it out.
All right.
Get it out.
Okay, so let me get the correct person who threw this out into the
Jack.
ether here.
Van Eck guy.
Matthew
we have
Se-
some friends that know Jack pretty well.
So Matthew Siegel from Van Eck posted like a 30-point PowerPoint, 30-page PowerPoint.
we
Man
have
had
that?
slides.
Do we have the slides?
I think the slide should be in there.
Slides in there?
Yeah.
These slides are epic.
No.
There's
Oh,
just,
you
like,
got to
too
go back to the
much.
tweet and then.
It's too many slides.
Oh
No.
God, was that playing the whole time?
Yeah,
That's
scroll
it.
down. There we
There it
go.
is.
Okay.
So anyway, he basically puts forth an argument.
Got to show this.
His
Nice.
first part of an argument is that it's not as bearish if we know who Satoshi is, which we'll talk about in a second. But he puts together this argument that Jack Dorsey is Satoshi Nakamoto, and in his PowerPoint, he puts together like a series of reasons why he thinks it is, and one of the things he does, he matches up Satoshi Nakamoto's actual email timestamps along with Jack's tweets, because you remember Jack founded Twitter. He was an early user of Twitter. So basically there's this like two chronological timelines of Satoshi and Jack, and there is like eerily similar topics being touched. They're online at the same times. They're offline for up to 7 days at a time at the same times. And I'll start going through. There's basically a list of like 100 coincidental pieces of evidence that are not like, they wouldn't hold up in a court of law. But when you add them all up together, it sounds.
Before you get into it,
Yeah.
tell me, like, are you convinced by this presentation? This presentation is like 27 slides.
90% convinced. Like,
90%.
I'm 100.
You're 100.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell me why.
Damn.
We're gonna go into it. We're gonna see.
I
the
mean,
slides.
90 is high for Nick.
yeah, no, I mean,
Nick
like,
said-
Nick
you
saying
went
90
from
made
how-
me triple my own.
We've had
belief.
this discussion. You were like, I'm pretty clear. It's just Hal and move on. But now after seeing
I
this,
just didn't care.
you're 100%.
I didn't care because
Okay.
I thought he was never gonna rear his head. I thought it was never gonna happen. At the time that we talked about it, we also said, like, if we do find out that Satoshi's alive, it's probably gonna be incredibly bearish for Bitcoin.
yeah, which I don't want to go into yet.
Which I just want to tease. But what I want to say now is that I read this presentation and I'm convinced. Like, I'm a juror. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah.
But I don't think
the
you've
thing
read it.
about knowing, no, I haven't. But the thing about knowing who it is like, I just then am become more fascinated about them. And I'm like, did you do acid before or after, like coming up with
Well, he had to be
Bitcoin?
quite
Like,
young, right? Like
Yeah.
in his 20s, I imagine when I don't know how old he is now.
Right. Like even before we get into it, like regardless if this is Satoshi or not, I'm like very impressed by this guy Jack to a level I never really was. 'Cause I didn't know he was like a cypherpunk at all. I thought he was just a business guy. I thought he was like an MBA guy with a beard.
Totally. And I
Cool.
went back and looked at his last like 30 tweets just like last night, and he's still cypherpunk to the core. Like he's still like posting decentralized like email server stuff. He's posting ways to like hide your true phone number. I mean, there's all this stuff that exists, but he's constantly posting like new technologies, new stuff that he's like really interested in. Okay. I'll just mention a few things because like you definitely, if these perks your interest at all, then you can like dive into it, and it's the cumulative list of all these things and the timeline specifically that syncs the argument all together. So a few things that I thought were like coincidental, but like kind of weird. The first Bitcoin transaction took place. Okay, I guess Matthew Siegel mentions that he has this obsession with numerology, just the significance of numbers, like your birthday, your age, your dad's birthday, you know, the address that you first lived at. Or
No, it's like it's important to note the severity of this. It's like an obsession
Yes.
with numerology. This guy.
obsession, and including his dad had
Yeah.
an obsession with numerology and just like the symbolism of it. And not to mention his like thing for pseudonyms. But anyway, first Bitcoin transaction took place on Jack's mom's birthday, January 11, 2009. Satoshi joined the Bitcoin forum on Jack's birthday. Satoshi's last mine block was on Jack's dad's birthday. So you could be like, okay,
Coincidence.
very weird coincidence, probability low, but definitely like plausible that it just randomly happened. The first person that Satoshi emails at is this guy Adam Back, and the presentation goes into like he knew Adam Back at this time. They were like somewhat close colleagues, and they post like a picture of evidence of him. And so in likelihood that Satoshi probably knew the first person that he emailed. He goes into these things called vanity Bitcoin addresses. So early on, he mentions to Hal Finney how he can brute force like some numbers and digits into public Bitcoin addresses using certain seed phrases or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he puts forth a series of seed phrases that have meaning to significance in his life. One referenced his like favorite author, Neil Stephenson, who is the author of Snowpiercer or something? No.
Great movie.
Yeah, the audience definitely knows the book. It's a big sci-fi book. I don't know why it's escaping me now. And one of the things in there is 2 Mint Plaza. He lived at 2 Mint Street. So in one of them is JD, Jack Dorsey, 2M, 2 Mint. And there's like 7 coincidences of like these specific vanity addresses
I'm
that
just
he
reading.
created.
This is insane.
It's
Yeah.
insane.
This is insane.
Put up. Why don't you put this
It's a
up on the
lot.
screen?
It's been
It's a
on the
lot.
screen the whole
This
time.
is
Okay, so
wild.
there's like 7 pages of this timeline on the coincidences of what Jack is thinking about in his life, what he's talking about, and it's just too eerily lined up with that this person would have the same things going on in their life. They would be away from the computer, and in particular, there's one instance in which he travels on a state delegation to, I think, Iraq, and he signs off for 7 days, both from Twitter and from the Bitcoin like forums, and they happen on the same exact date. So he goes missing. Okay, I'll bring another element to the story. Jack's best friend is apparently Alyssa Milano. He's the godfather of her son, and she writes this like series of quote unquote fictional books, and they're kind of like cartoonish books. I think they're maybe meant for fun stories, potentially meant for kids.
Actress Alyssa Milano?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're clearly about Jack. The book series is called Hacktivist. They're about someone who starts a social network and also has this secret decentralized peer-to-peer network thing going on the side. And in one of the book's plots, and this is something I want to talk about after we talk about the Jack Dorsey thing. In one of them, the social network gets so popular during the Arab Spring that the CIA approaches the protagonist of Hacktivist and says, "Hey, you need to come and play with our side, because if you don't, we're going to let your little secret loose about your little peer-to-peer network system, and we're going to let that secret become exposed if you don't come around to us." And in the book, the protagonist is like, "Oh, this is too much. He needs to leave the social network and get away from it all." And it just, even all the way through the third book, it matches up Jack's life. It's clearly about him. He writes the foreword in one of them, basically saying like, "Hey, this is a great story. Like, white hat hacking is a thing that society should go on." All right, Armand just had a realization.
He's been
Armand, what
reading-
did you read?
Armand's been reading the whole time.
I'm just reading. This is absurd.
What did
Like,
you just read?
I just read like I'm just reading like Jack's activity versus Satoshi's activity. It's like
it lines up exactly.
like Jack's dad's birthday, 55 years old, born 5/3/53. Block 5353 is minted, awarded with address starting with 4DBY.
For
Dad's birthday.
Like, come on. Fuck. Shit.
There's all this.
There's so many. The mom thing, the coding it in C, the attending the award show in San Francisco, accidentally logging on to an IP address in
yes, so
California.
Yeah, it shows that it's in Bay Area. Like,
What the hell?
yeah, he made a mistake and like accidentally showed his IP in Bay Area.
Here's another thing. Satoshi's GMX email is hacked
a lot of smoke
in
screens.
2014, and the hacker attempts to extort Satoshi by sharing the fact that he knows about his connection to St. Louis, Missouri. Jack is born in St. Louis, Missouri. Anyway, this continues to go on the
Busy
evidence.
Rock.
And at one point, the presentation says, well, if Jack was Satoshi, even if he doesn't want to be known as Satoshi, wouldn't he be against someone else claiming to be Satoshi?
Oh, good one. I
Like
like where you're going
someone
with
like
this.
Craig Wright, who famously said he was Satoshi, and he gets taken to court over it, and eventually proves that, like, okay, he's probably not Satoshi. Guess who's the funder behind those lawsuits? Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey was the one fighting against Craig Wright claiming to be Satoshi.
What?
So Craig Wright's attorneys argue in early 2024 that if Craig Wright was not Satoshi, then the real Satoshi would have been expected to come forward to counter the claim. It did not dawn on him that the person countering the claim was Jack Dorsey, who was the basis for the Copa v. Wright legal challenge to begin with. Jack Dorsey came forward to counter the claim. And this is just in July of 2024. Jack wrote on Nostr, "I frequently imagine Satoshi sitting back somewhere and laughing at it all."
Yeah, he's like writing his own little.
Dude, I
autobiography.
remember this. We were living in San Francisco at this time that Jack, I remember because we have friends that were working at Square.
Yep.
And I remember when Cyclass Coffee opened. And I
Great coffee
remember
shop.
when these friends were telling me about the shit that Square was up to with like POS systems and bringing them to coffee shops and like, dude. Yeah,
And
like,
it's really interesting that
and he was looking for a use case.
Yes. So one of like Satoshi's last sentiments, his departing sentiment, was like, "Man, like our community's good, but it's small. Like it feels like we need something to like kickstart it." And that's his like sentiment. And then he goes and starts Square, and this startup community who's doing card readers for mobile phones, but somehow it finds a strategic priority within the first year to start accepting Bitcoin payments. Like why is that?
Wait, was that a real thing?
Yes.
Square payment platform.
Earliest of earliest.
It was accepting Bitcoin.
Yes.
The earliest
Yes.
adopter.
Okay, like what percent are
Yes.
you now? What percent are you now?
110. This is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
No, this is ridiculous.
All right, people
And
are
you would hope that like the person in that position would like put up more of a smoke screen and more of a separation. But the reality is, for anyone that's doing something great, and any time in your life that you've been building something awesome, you can't help it but like want to create a symbiotic relationship between the things you do.
Totally.
You need it because you are bringing it to fruition. It's like you're in a position of power. Well, if I allow, Bitcoin payments, I will will bring this into the universe. Like it's something you would do. You couldn't help it, you know? Like it's just like
I remember like being a little middle schooler or something and like TPing houses, you know? And like that was just like a fun thing to do. And the next day, like you could easily get away with it. Be like, let's go check it out. Let's go check out our work.
dude, that's
when I get caught.
That's a great example. Yeah, that's a great example.
And I feel like Satoshi is giving all these little Easter eggs. You know, Jack is giving all these little Easter eggs. He's wearing the Satoshi shirt out in public at the Super Bowl.
This is during the whole
Oh my
lawsuit
God.
with Craig Wright. And he goes like on the biggest stage and wears a Satoshi shirt.
that's the best way to make sure people know you're not. Like that's
Yeah,
exactly what you would
It's
do.
like, oh, I forgot how big of
It's
a
a
fan
classic
Jack
move.
was of Bitcoin.
Don't remove yourself from it. Inject yourself into it.
And so he
You
was
know?
asked specifically in 2020 by Lex Friedman, you know, are you Satoshi? And he goes, no. And if I was, do you think I would tell you? And the author, the Matthew Siegel says, okay, they asked Adam Bach, they asked like several people in the past, and they all just said definitively, no, I'm not. Not like no, and if I
you
were,
asked me, I would never say, and no, I wouldn't tell you if I was. It's a clear statement from
giveaway.
someone who that is the giveaway. That is the giveaway.
and so all this started.
Would you let's think about it? Play the exercise. If someone asked you if you were to Satoshi, you would just be like, no,
I wish.
dude. Like
I don't know. I might panic and say that.
no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
yeah.
Because again, that's like it's a giveaway. It's just like you couldn't help but say that. You're bragging. You're bragging when you
It's a
say
little
something
bragging,
like that.
yes.
It's like I'm not going to tell you, but I am.
So this started coming around in like November, December of last year. And as it started, like, so there was another author who was like collecting all this evidence that helped towards this research. And as it really started bubbling up, Jack posts on Twitter, lie forward, not backwards. And the question is like, is he basically saying that like, I'm going to continue the lie and not ever admit that I did it? Anyway, some of the stuff we're mentioning is obviously totally circumstantial, but like when you look at the whole story, specifically the timestamps, I'm even more convinced. The Alyssa Milano thing with the book, I'm like, why would you let your best friend even get this close to it? So before we go, if this is bullish or bearish,
Well, I want to see if there's anybody who's like done any comments. Like, has anybody given
yeah,
comments? on this?
they're fired up. So Marty asked he requested this link to this presentation in the Discord, and I just posted it in the lounge in the Discord.
Awesome.
If anyone's open to it, he's equally as I love seeing Eric's excitement on the relatively tinfoil topic. Strong work.
I'm getting more and more, Marty. Actually, I got
Yeah.
more for you.
Snow Crash. Alan Bryce mentions that's the name of the book.
The day after, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
The day after he goes offline permanently, he says, on to the next one. This begs the question, what was the previous one? Okay, I can't do No, dude.
I
come
just want to
on.
thank you for not doing any of your homework so that we could get a real authentic reaction during the pod as you read all the prep for the first time.
This is so ridiculous.
No, I mean this is the reaction I had in bed last night.
I pride myself on prepping, but I couldn't this time, and I think it worked out.
Real authenticity to it.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
here's another beautiful one that's up on the screen now. Jack's timelines. December 14th. Twitter is subpoenaed over WikiLeaks 1 week after Satoshi expressed frustration with the WikiLeaks Bitcoin donations. Just like 9 days before, and you might assume that like Jack knows a lawsuit or some kind of like action is coming. You typically know when you're about to get subpoenaed, something's coming. 9 days before, Satoshi's angry that people are donating Bitcoin to WikiLeaks. And he says, and I'm having a tough time reading this, but Bitcoin is a small beta community in its infancy. You would not stand to get more than
Pocket change.
Pocket change. Go
and
ahead.
the heat you would bring would likely destroy us at this stage.
So he knows heat is coming onto WikiLeaks, and he's saying, guys, stop donating to them. We
gosh.
just started. We're going to get fried if you keep doing this.
Swarm is headed toward us.
Oh my God. I think this passes a court of law now.
Law is just, well, I mean, criminal is 95%. But civil is just
Yeah.
preponderance.
Okay, so
Preponderance
I
of
wanted to
evidence.
bring one point out of this PowerPoint to just
Hold on, Armand's got another one.
go ahead. What do you got?
Jack comes back as executive chairman of Twitter. while remaining CEO of Square, a demanding set of responsibilities. Like next month, I've moved on. It's in good hands with Gavin and everyone. Final email. Like, dude.
Yeah, the career markers, milestones.
Yeah. I mean, that one's like a little bit more of a gap.
Yeah.
It's 1 month ish, 3 weeks, but like all of this together is like,
It's a lot.
you know, it's like OJ standing there being like, no, if the glove don't fit, don't quit. It's like, bro, like, you know, come on, man. Like, this is pretty bad.
This seems like a good job for AI, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, can we just get like a 6-day deep research AI thing going on? Just cross-reference all known data points of Satoshi.
I wonder
with
what
all
would
known
happen.
It's probably
And-
what
and
they,
I- and I
it's
hope
probably what they
someone-
use to do the research.
I hope
Maybe
someone
you're
from the
right,
audience
yeah.
does this. Just take these tweets, take these images, upload them to ChatGPT, and probably use the 01 or 03 and just say like, what do you think? What is the probability that Jack Dorsey is Satoshi? I just want to know what ChatGPT would say based on this evidence.
Oh, and his earlier, we didn't even go into his like earlier career before Twitter, but it was all about peer-to-peer networks. Like, and he even talked about using eCash, and he used keywords that were in the white paper. His previous job had a concept of the white papers. It's like, anyway. All right. So,
Okay, so let's move forward to
move
like what are the ramifications?
okay, can we talk about one thing in this set of evidence that I think is really important? So in this Alyssa Milano book, she's basically saying, Jack, Twitter did have this like Arab Spring moment, clearly. Is she saying that the CEI went to Jack and was like, hey, we know about Bitcoin and you created it, so like play with us or else we're going to
expose you.
expose you.
So there's like a grain of truth to the CIA Bitcoin.
Already knowing. And so we've assumed that like the CIA, I don't know, maybe most people have assumed that the CIA knows who Satoshi is,
But
but
he's just confiding in his girl.
maybe. And so I don't know if there's anything to that. Like, I don't think there's anything that the CIA could do. It's not like, hey, hand over only your private keys. I don't think there's anything they could do, but like, it's just interesting to know that the CIA may already know who Satoshi is, and there's probably a subset of people, obviously other than Jack, that know that he's the creator of Bitcoin. So anyway, I found that interesting. But let's talk about, is this bullish or bearish? False just said in the chat, this is bullish
False.
for BTC.
I need a thesis.
Give me,
Hold on,
give
he
me
just
the
says,
bullet.
he just says this is bullish.
Explain yourself.
Okay, so here's why it could be bearish, like in simple terms. One is that Satoshi has a shitload of Bitcoin that we thought were lost forever, and now they could be liquid, they could be sold.
Wait, what percentage does he have?
5%.
Is 5?
Oh, just over 5%.
Oh, that's high.
Why would you assume that, like, liquid just because he's alive, or liquid
Yes.
because you? Okay.
Yeah, because
Like,
we
fundamentally-
we thought that if he was Hal
Yeah.
Finney, then he's dead, and that those coins would never move, and then they're like kind of like wiped from the market. Now they're not wiped from the market, perhaps.
I think you could easily argue that if it was Jack's never doing anything with that Bitcoin.
Okay, but one day Jack will die, and he will have to pass all of his assets to a next of kin. And like the Matthew Siegel's arguing that like, no, this is okay that we know, but we just need Jack to come forward and like, what are your plans? Like, when do you plan on selling? Can you tell us the exact schedule? Can you tell us what you're going to do with these private keys when you move on?
Why does he have to pass it on to anybody?
Well, 'cause,
Why
like,
does
that's why I
control have
think
to go
this
to
guy's,
Why
everybody?
like-
would you not?
Well, because like Michael Saylor, I think, has done a good job. He said he was going to donate his Bitcoin to Bitcoin by allowing it to just sit in cold storage, meaning like
Oh.
those are now off the market. So that's like he's already like made his intentions clear, but like Jack hasn't.
Isn't that like irresponsible, just as like a human?
to let that mouth
5%'s too much, dude.
It's a
Like, what if-
donation. It's a donation to Bitcoin.
But why donate to Bitcoin? Like, what if you could like cure cancer or something? Like, what if
Maybe-
you could donate like 1% of your like? What if his Bitcoin is worth like trillions of dollars when he dies?
What if he thinks that's the best non-profit cause, a decentralized store of value money system?
Seems so bad.
No, I think it's. I think like Bitcoiners would all argue that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not
Yeah.
that outlandish.
Yeah, but Bitcoiners are crazy people.
Sometimes they're just startup founders.
I mean,
Great response.
I imagine someone a little older, maybe a little wiser, but I could kind of get around to it, Tim, especially when you
How
even.
so? How old would he have been?
I don't know. For
at
some
the
reason,
adoption
I
of the white
imagine it like
paper?
Hal Finney, like, I don't know, 50-ish something, kind of like.
Nah, this is our generation fucking hacker nerd that would do this.
I was gonna be an Asian guy.
A quant.
Yeah.
How do you not?
His name's Satoshi Nakamoto.
How do you
Come on.
not hurt
No,
the
white
rest of
guy
the
in love
world
with
if you,
Japanese
if you just
culture makes
delete
sense.
5% of the money supply? By the way, like, aren't you hurting 5% of the world? Like, imagine Bitcoin becomes like the world monetary base or something, and then you just delete 5% of it, but it's not really like totally ubiquitous. Like, aren't you just helping people who hold? Aren't you just like making Bitcoiners rich and like hurting the rest of the world? Like, if we just deleted a bunch of the dollar supply right now, that would be bad, right?
I don't know how much Bitcoin solves the world. That's what the question that you're asking. But the Bitcoiners believe
Bitcoin solves shit in the world if you convert it to dollars or give it to somebody who converts it to dollars.
No, like Bitcoiners believe that dollars
Not in
are
a Bitcoin
are
denominated
dead.
world.
Like,
But that's
dollars are
crazy.
worthless.
Like, if you could give you Bitcoin to somebody who's like doing research that could like prevent an asteroid from hitting Earth or something, and instead you burn the keys, that would be bad, right?
But the idea, I guess, is that those smart people would already have their Bitcoin, and this makes their Bitcoin more valuable, and so they can do more research.
And you're also asking the question of like handing this over to another human being whose motives and how that would be utilized is subject to question. And there's a lot of security issues here as well.
Yes.
With this whole thing. Jesus, like none of that has been discussed. Like, is it his granddaughter or daughter or whoever that would take over, or what, just him in and of itself? Like, this is someone you have to guard more than you got to guard the president
It's
of the
true.
United
Like, having
States.
those private keys would be wild.
Jesus Christ.
Satoshi's
like,
private
yeah, this
keys?
is
Ooh.
the most like you can't like that's liquid. Like you access those private keys, that's liquid.
Okay, so-
like you can't get Elon Musk's wealth. You
Right.
can't put a gun to Elon Musk's head and say, "Give me $400 billion." He'd laugh at you.
So
He'd
it's
be
not
like,
that
you don't understand how this works.
Like you said that Elon had the best trade of all time. I could agree with that. This is the most valuable.
This is
thing,
the richest person
this is-
in the world.
No, this is the most valuable thing of all time, which is that string of words. That string of words is the most valuable item of all time.
It's the most valuable asset, and it's also essentially liquid in a sense, right? Like obviously, yeah, it would break like Bitcoin if 5% moved, but like this is way more valuable than Elon's money, is what I'm saying. That's tied up in Tesla and SpaceX for the most
I
part.
mean, if Sailor's right, when Jack dies, that could be like $5 trillion.
Yeah,
Right. Well, like MicroStrategy has like
Crazy amount of money.
two point something percent of the Bitcoin supply. So this is, I mean, they're making pretty good inroads too.
True.
Yeah.
Maybe Sailor gets above that.
I mean, doesn't all these questions we're asking about the future possibilities, like this, by definition, is bearish? Because like these did not really exist in everyone's mind
It
anymore.
can't be bullish. How is it bullish?
It's definitely not. And also, I'd argue that like Jack could be presented by any halfway decent politician to be like a political angle, and all of a sudden, Bitcoin, which is this kind of like apolitical technology, is now
if
this
you're gonna
like.
say it's bearish, that means that it's only bearish if it's confirmed to Jack, and all Jack has to do is say it's not me. And
Which
it
he will continue to do.
He will continue to do that till the day he dies.
And imagine like
It's not bearish as long as he doesn't come out and turn himself into some celebrity over it.
well, you know how he's kind of like gone off the what you'd consider like the normal
Yeah.
rails.
Yeah.
I gotta think that like this guy has like many wallets. Like we're only focused on Satoshi Nakamoto's wallet.
Right.
Jack probably has so much fucking Bitcoin if he's Satoshi that he's like exited his like care for like Square or Block or Twitter or whatever. He's just like probably a guy who has a big beard and wears tie-dye Satoshi shirts and just does whatever he wants. So post-economics.
He's beyond anybody. Yeah. 100%.
Okay, so one thing I just thought of.
He won't do it. I mean, there was a statement in one of the most telling, like interesting, deep one is it's right here. When Dorsey was questioned if he would sacrifice his own ego for his own accomplishments, he said while touching his face, "Key, I think the appreciation that comes from doing something good and being able to see it and see people use it is pretty overwhelming and powerful, more than seeing your name in the headlines." This is already a core part of the decision he's made. It's like, I'm more satisfied by watching this happen than I am about it being about me.
but-
And that's powerful.
But right now, he's able to do this in peace. And
Yeah.
this
build
information's out
steam.
there. It'll build,
It'll
and he
build.
might just be like, I
think
got it.
like
He's not giving it up.
so. Hold on, this came out like this. This research started coming out in like November. You said
Yeah, like someone started posting this stuff, and I think Matthew Siegel posted this, what, four days ago?
4 days ago. So this is still quite early days. I think one thing that crossed my mind is like, what if he does come out publicly as Satoshi, or maybe it doesn't have to come out as public, but like we give so much goddamn mind share to MicroStrategy, the stonk. How about Square? How about XYZ? Square rebranded to XYZ. I think I could buy the furthest out of the money call on Square.
Bro, that stock is dead.
Yeah, until
Now.
fucking it's Satoshi Nakamoto
Now, I
and
know.
it does MicroStrategy.
Yeah.
What if we? I think you can put $10,000 into
I like you,
the
man.
furthest out of money call
I like
option
this.
and like turn that into game changing money.
But do you
I
think
like
that's
this.
what Jack wants to do with
Wait,
it?
you lost me. Why
I
would
like
Jack do
lotto
that?
tickets.
Okay, here's the thesis: Bitcoiners YOLO into companies that support Bitcoin, a la MicroStrategy. What if they found out that the founder is Satoshi Nakamoto?
And just believe it, even if he doesn't admit it.
What if he does admit it?
And if he did admit it, it'd be a whole different
It's
game.
over then.
Well, he won't admit it.
He
though,
won't
So
admit
you
it.
can't include that in your thesis. He won't admit it.
He might.
But if he did,
I mean, he kind of already
That's-
has. He wears Satoshi shirts at the Super Bowl.
yeah. So that is the way that he would admit it.
Yeah.
He would just keep leaving little breadcrumbs.
Easter eggs.
I wouldn't ever tell you if I was.
But I don't think the
In my opinion,
I don't think the Bitcoin community is owning Square stock right now, which is rebranded to XYZ. So it's called XYZ now. I don't think the Bitcoin community has like cyber horneted around this stock yet. But I imagine that they could, and they might. And if that happens, I want
I want your opinion on this. In my opinion, if you were Satoshi, first of all, you would never tell people you were. And the only way that you would was to say that exact statement that Jack said. And if I were, I wouldn't tell you. To me, that is as good as an admission. Like, that's ridiculous. Am I crazy?
No,
This is new for me. So
Just
like
make
I'm
me
I'm
look up Square stock now.
I'm literally
now he's on. He's on board. He's on board.
I swear to you, like, think of every person, every movie, every situation when the dude is guilty and he's sitting there looking at you and he goes, and if I was, I would never tell you.
What's the ticker for
Nobody
Square?
who's not says that statement.
I
I've
just-
never met a person who says that isn't that.
So Steven just asked, "What's the ticker for Square?" And
Used
I
to
just
be-
it used to be SQ.
Block?
That's what I tried.
Block.
Yeah, but they changed their ticker to XYZ.
Oh, it's XYZ.
XYZ? Oh, of course. How did I not think of that?
I think that part is in the presentation as well.
Bro.
Anyway,
I think I
um,
need my
XYZ.
computer.
So
You can't trade an off hour.
Corby does ask now, what's the bet on Jack throwing away the OG? Okay. I thought he was asking something different. He was asking what's the bet on throwing the OG 1 million Bitcoin wallet. But I guess what's the play? Like, is there like a poly market you could like make money on? Like,
That's a great one. That would
Is
be a
it-
great
is
one.
it-
What's it at right now? 4%?
But there's no way to get finality unless he like actually announces.
well, no, but you just trade the
You trade the
like.
the
I haven't seen
percentages.
this in mainstream media yet. Like, no one's like.
We're still early days to this. That's what I meant. That's what I'm
I
saying.
believe Eric's making me think about just YOLOing Square.
I mean, like I think it's a way cooler Bitcoin stock
I'm
than
so down on my
MicroStrategy.
Square. I've owned Square for so long.
Well,
I'm
looking
so
at
down
this
on it.
chart, it doesn't surprise me because
It is the worst stock I've ever owned.
it's basically just a gigantic 10-year head and shoulder pattern. It's
I used
just
to follow this guy. Do you remember Meet Kevin?
Yeah.
Dude, that guy got
Oh
me to
my-
buy so much Square.
oh no,
down
you got YouTube
only.
influence.
Yeah, down only.
Damn,
Haven't
he
seen
ran
that
for
guy
like,
in a while.
he ran for senator or something. He
Did
ran
he?
for ran for office somewhere.
He did well personally, but he
He started an ETF that failed.
fucked me.
He
on
started
that
an
one.
ETF.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did. I don't blame him.
Crazy how you can like. I mean, this ties into our future convo, but like how influencers just become.
Armand, do you feel complete on this?
I'm
conversation?
Really, yeah, thank you for this.
Because
guys.
like I need
Wow.
it. You need. Yeah.
When you guys said like, okay, you put the card like, Jack Dorsey is Satoshi. I was like, okay, cool. Here comes another like fun little random thesis.
You don't take us
of-
seriously, huh?
I didn't say I don't take it seriously.
It
It
sounded like
like
a
you
quick
don't
hitter.
take us
It did
seriously.
sound
sounds like a quick hitter.
like some kind of joke.
This is
This is massive.
this is a lot of evidence. This is a lot of
Just like
patterns.
27 slides.
I'm
worth
telling
of-
you, I can't wait to get in front of a computer, upload all these images, and ask every LLM model that I can think of. Give me probability score.
So hold on,
Is this
you've like
Satoshi?
lost your ability to do that.
What do you mean?
Like you could ask your own self. You could like upload these to your brain.
Oh, no. I said 110, but if I'm being serious, 80 plus.
Yeah, I'm actually like more like
80 plus.
I'm more like in there, but
It's really strong.
yeah, it's overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming.
The old when Craig Wright was in court, there was a bunch of old school Bitcoiners that signed a message saying he is not Satoshi Nakamoto.
It's not Craig Wright. Yeah.
And the oldest existing address that signed it had the address started with one JAK, which was his pre-Bitcoin pseudonym that
Jack
he used
Damon.
on the internet.
Jack Damon.
Yes.
I read that too.
And that was the oldest one that signed it.
Dead giveaway.
Oh my god.
Dead giveaway. Do you guys know that meme? By the way? You don't know that fucking video?
No, but I like that.
Oh my god, you don't know Dead Giveaway?
I've never
The
seen
origins of Dead Giveaway is a fantastic viral video.
that. I can't tell if
Oh my god.
Either way.
Dead Giveaway.
All right, well, let me get some of the chat's thoughts in here
Look up
before
Dead
we...
Giveaway on YouTube.
For the
bro.
record, I've never heard this either.
Oh my god.
Okay, Steven, what
So good.
level of acceptance are you of this thesis?
I don't know. I was trying to do like kind of like a Bayesian analysis on this. Like, what is the actual population of humans that Satoshi could be? Is it like 1,000 people? Is it like 100 people?
Good interview question, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Might be like 100 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you
Right?
narrow it down, he's
So-
definitely one of those 100 people.
So you're
So
going to say
you're-
it's 1%?
So your
one of 100?
well, your baseline is like kind of like 1%, right? Which is kind of high given all the humans on Earth, but you've narrowed it down to this like specific subset of.
It's weird that you would start there after like talking about 27 slides worth, but
But that's where you have to start because like whenever you do these things, you're like, okay, what is this data relative to sort of like the population-wide data? This is like when you do, false positives, false negatives, whatever, in your test. It's like how you have this like weird phenomenon in medicine where you like have like a positive result on the test, but they're like, oh no, actually, there's only like a 5% chance you actually have this disease.
yeah.
And it's because like when you compare it with like this sort of population-wide thing, it's like a weird thing in stats. So it's important to look at. I don't know. I was like 20% when I read all this. Nick's making me bump up though. Like Nick's conviction is
Why were you
contagious.
so low?
Because like I hadn't like really read like all 27 slides. Like I browsed them all and I was like, okay, this is a lot, but I'm also reading this on the internet.
You didn't take
The
yourself
internet's full of
seriously.
nonsense. And like I can't believe everything I read on the internet because my whole life would just be chaos, right?
Sure, I am giving a lot of. I'm assuming the facts that are being presented are correct. The timelines are correct. I'm assuming
Yeah.
that statements are correct. I am taking that as truth.
There's a lot here.
I have
It's-
not done any due
It's
diligence.
a big deal
I'm
that
reacting.
the Van Eck guy's coming out.
So
and
this
saying it
guy,
too,
Matt
right?
Siegel, is a CFA charter holder too, so I know what he's been through. I know that he's like capable of rigorous analysis.
Yeah.
That's what I'm like confident in.
There you go.
All right, let's get some of the chat's thoughts in here before we wrap up this topic. Excuse me. Fall says, I just think it would force him to do something with it and probably burn it. Also, all publicity is good
Yeah.
publicity, hopefully. Christopher Ledger says, bullish. It's a real cypherpunk, not CIA or some intelligence project.
Agree. Actually, that's a good point. I agree with that.
There's Ledger.
Deleting
Glad we had Ledger in here today for this.
deleting 5% of the dollars in the world, had they been all in the hand of a dollar holder, I don't understand how that would be bad.
A dollar whale holder.
Oh, a dollar
holder.
whale holder.
I mean, that'd be very bad if you think about how the dollar system works, right? Like deflation is bad if you destroy the collateral layer for all the credit expansion.
You can't deny the white guy in love with Japanese culture.
Oh,
It's
and there's a whole
just so
section.
fitting. It's so fitting. He's like the techno Tim Ferriss. Like it just works.
Is
Yeah, that
he
part
like
is
a guy who's
good.
into the
That
Japanese?
part is very
The
compelling.
presentation
That's
mentions
all
that.
throughout the
That
presentation.
part is definitely compelling.
Goes to Japan, loves Japan, uses Japanese things in his work.
Country Square first
like-
launched to outside the U.S.
Dude,
Japan.
it's like constant throughout the whole.
Yeah.
The numbers are rising for Steven.
I could also see where this is a bunch of circumstantial evidence where like you find out later through DNA evidence the guy did not commit the murder, but he got he got convicted. Let's get some more thoughts in here. False says, but Armand, Jack Dorsey does not think of us like peasants. His world cannot be interpreted by us mortals. Corby says MSTR will have 500k BTC in total in a matter of weeks. Half-ish of Satoshi wallet.
Wow.
XYZ leaps on market open tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's the play. Honestly, I think these XYZ leaps, like people
This
aren't.
came out before market closed, right?
This came out 4 days ago, but I don't think people are on it yet.
Oh, I take that back. He posted this. Matthew Siegel posted this 1 day ago, but one of the contributors to the research did like a sloppy version of this that didn't make any sense, and that was 4 days ago.
I mean, I like these kinds of plays. They're funny because, like, what's priced into the stock is already priced into the stock, right? So it's sort of like you're just free rolling. It's not like you're going to buy, like, a bunch and then it's just going to go down for, like, it could go down, but it's just sort of noise, right? So you're just, like, free rolling the.
Okay, so how do I get the
upside
highest
of it.
delta?
So like I get what Steven's saying, and I think what you're suggesting is to like buy the stock or buy like deep in the money options because you're like essentially buying the stuff for what it is, and you have this like upside that isn't sort of like recognized by the market. Is that what you're saying? Essentially,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just,
I
like,
think-
free rolling
I
because
think that's a
everything
good
else
way
is
to play
already.
it. I think it's a good way to play it.
Too elegant.
I think the better way to play it for me is to like bet on the Cyber Hornet thesis. Like if this is Satoshi and if this thing like actually catches wind the way that like MicroStrategy's caught wind, like the premium on this stock will go to the fucking roof.
Well,
and I want to bet on roof.
Bitcoin will dump, right?
Bitcoin
long,
will dump.
long
I am-
square short
I-
Bitcoin.
Well, no, I'm buying that dip like crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm buying. I'm buying Bitcoin. It will dump if this hits the press and like instills fear.
Square would go up more though. It would.
Guys,
Because Square's it's so worthless right now.
the
in comparison.
publications that have published this so far, Quartz, the Daily Hodl, the Economic Times, Brave New Coin, Fortune, the India version, like no one,
Yeah.
Like
no
no
one,
one's picked this up.
No, listen,
no one has picked this up.
You buy Bitcoin. I understand the like short term thesis of Square, but like you're talking about generational money still sitting in Bitcoin if there's a dip of like enormous levels like we're talking here. The amount of fear, because people will just react with like this is so bearish, this is so bearish. Like in the end it works out. It'll be fine.
Okay,
I'm buying Bitcoin.
I don't know how we can move
I was
on from
already
this,
starting
but
to become a Bitcoin maxi. Like I think it'll be
I mean,
fine.
this definitely doesn't make me want to own Bitcoin more.
no, it doesn't.
Because you don't like the unknown.
Well, you're introducing unknowns.
Way
into
too many.
The whole shtick of the thing is that there's just nothing
That'll just
that can
increase
happen.
volatility, won't it?
There's no upside to Jack being like the Bitcoin.
I agree.
guy. Like there's like no upside. There's like only downside. You're just like only introducing uncertainty.
The upside is good prices.
I don't know. Like you can
Why
see
is the
like
upside good prices?
Well, are you assuming that long term, then it's just bearish overall for Bitcoin?
No, I'm
matter
saying
what?
like there's no scenario where it's bullish. It only has like bearish scenarios.
Couldn't
Like,
you
I don't see a.
couldn't you
bullish
totally see
scenario.
Trump being like, "Oh, Jack Dorsey's the creator of Bitcoin"? Isn't that the guy who like censored the Hunter Biden laptop? I mean, you could just see him like going out of control and be like, you know what?
Like
Fuck this thing.
best possible scenario for Bitcoin is Satoshi's dead. Like it's like the most perfect scenario. You can't
Yes.
make a better scenario.
That is good.
Ergo, every other scenario has to be more bearish on a relative basis,
But
right?
Satoshi will. My point is, Satoshi will always be dead because Jack will always say he's not Satoshi.
But there is a point where like
the
it's just so
volatility
overwhelming,
that will
right?
come with people believing that Jack is Satoshi will create an incredible buying opportunity. And Bitcoin will be fine because Jack will never admit that he's Satoshi.
So you don't think this is bullish? You're thinking it might set up a mean reversion trade for you?
Sure.
A buying opportunity. You actually think it's bearish.
Okay, we can move on then.
It's really hard to move on from this.
Sorry,
I
we
get
can
too
move on.
hyped.
We can
No,
move on.
it's a good one.
My kind of tinfoil. Okay, so we're going to talk about a video that Steven saw, and he quoted.
Okay, a lot of people saw this.
Okay, a lot of people saw this video.
Dozens.
The
Dozens.
author is a guy named
Dozens of us.
Good Alexander. Steven thinks it's one of the best videos ever seen.
I didn't say ever seen. I said saw recently, right?
This is one of the best. Let me
This
read
is
the
one
quote.
of the best videos I've watched in recent memory.
Yeah. So recent memory for me is about like
6
8
minutes.
days.
Goldfish.
Okay, it's a 45-minute video, so I'm
good
gonna
video.
I'm gonna give you like the bullet points that he touches on. I'm gonna try to, and then we can kind of dive into the 4 different points.
Do you want me to pull up the TLDR on the side here?
No, 'cause it's
The
like
TLDR is 16 pages long.
I know,
wasn't-
but
don't we
no,
need
no,
to-
no, no. The TLDR is this paragraph.
No.
No,
That
it
is the intro.
No, that's the TLDR of the whole thing, and then he goes into the timestamps.
We've prepared a TLDR.
But I
Okay.
don't think we should do this. But I think we do need to give
The
credit.
TLDR almost makes it worse.
But we need to give credit because I think this was shared as a pod topic on our Discord
Oh.
by.
it
that-
was shared, but that's not why I put it on the board.
But you
so I
saw
will
it-
give partial credit.
So you saw it. You saw it before.
That's the most
it
stupid
was
thing I've
shared.
ever heard.
But thank you. I want to thank the
That's
community
most
for.
stupid thing I've ever heard.
It was shared by Yanni. Is that his name, Yanni? In the Discord.
Okay.
So
I thought
appreciate
it was
that.
from.
Yanni, we award you full points for this. credit.
I'm going full points.
Yeah, we're giving full points.
Steven's
Steven
still
will give you
standing
a
on
third.
partial credit.
Partial
Fine.
credit.
I appreciate
Steven,
all the
partial credit.
appreciate all the
Cesaro.
community involvement.
Russian judge.
All right, so his first point, he goes and talks about the reflexivity of influencers and truth making, and he goes on to talk about people like Andrew Huberman, Tim Ferriss, Chris Williamson, that act as aggregators of knowledge rather than originators, and over time, their audience kind of continues to share the same information, and then that kind of gets reflexed back into this like ecosphere, and it becomes truth. And as their platforms growth, they now become the primary
truth.
sources of
Yeah.
truth, even though they're just aggregators.
Yeah, let's take it chunk by chunk.
Oh, you want to
Don't,
stick there?
yeah,
Okay.
don't try to do the whole video
Okay.
in one shot.
Okay.
I think there's like there's bits to this, right?
Okay.
So yeah, the video opens like it's interesting because he's going after sort of just like modern influencer figures. He's basically kind of like going after the manosphere, as it's been coined in a particular way.
So you got to explain that term because you dropped that on me yesterday, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah,
is that?
I'm like way too online. No, the manosphere is this like
Are you talking
term,
like man, like MANA, mana, like mana, like
No, like male.
like
Dude.
you know, like the atmosphere,
dude sphere.
but like
The dude interviewer.
man,
The
Oh, like
dude podcast
man-
interviewer.
manosphere.
man.
The version of us
Manosphere.
that just sits and asks intellectuals questions.
Got it. Manosphere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss,
Friedman.
Sean Ryan, Lex Friedman, Andrew Huberman. You know, like
Alfalfa
all
pod.
these. Yeah. We should be so lucky. But there is this kind of like bubble of pods that. This whole point is interesting to me because like I think there was a time in my life where finding shit like Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and all this stuff was like, oh my God, I've broken out of this bubble that I grew up in, and now I've been exposed to this new like open way of thinking about the world, right? But then there becomes a point where like everything becomes like sort of like self-referential. Like his point is that like nobody in this like arena is like nobody's like doing original research, right? Everybody is just sort of filtering
Repeating
stuff that's already on the internet and repeating, and then soon they start going on each other's podcasts, repeating the stuff that they already filtered, and pretty soon there's just so much of the same thing going back and forth, and it's just like everything about your existence that you're like, oh, this is truth.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not actually original research. There's no like accountability for you
Okay.
know,
You wanna
I
go
thought-
first?
No,
You
you
go.
go first.
No, let Armand go.
Okay,
real
you
quick.
go, you go.
He's gonna have a spicy take, probably.
No. I'm not sure I agree. I like that you wanted to take this piece by piece because this is.
we have to take a piece by
It's
piece.
big. So first things first with this, like, he also like refutes the idea that these people. Well, it depends how tinfoil you want to get, and like, there was conversations about this being very tinfoily, but like I'm removing all of that and just saying the people that have these podcasts, for the most part, have worked very hard to be in those positions to interview those people and create a great show and serve as a filtering mechanism for like great work that is out there in the world.
So let me ask you this, because like most people don't see that grunt work that gets laid, right? Like
They don't see it at all.
Like, I see Huberman years later as he's already at millions of subscribers, and I'm like thinking like, where the hell did this guy come from?
Yeah, you don't see it at all. Like, I mean, I think like most of us have been following Tim Ferriss since he was a blogger. He didn't even have, he had just launched the 4 Hour Work Week. This was in 2007, right? So this guy was hustling, going to conferences, trying to meet people, trying to write a book. And then the book became successful and then was like, let me start a blog. And the blog became successful and was like, let me start a podcast. And that book was original ideas. I refute the idea that these people didn't have any original ideas. I think lumping too many people together at once is dangerous. Tim Ferriss had original ideas. Andrew Huberman is a scientist. You can take issue with him if you want, but he's a scientist. Chris Williamson, different category. That's just like any of us that wants to interview someone. I think he's an eloquent speaker. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a good guy. And I think he's worked his ass off. And he shouldn't be shamed for like just being an interviewer. So my first issue is just the lumping together of all the manosphere thing. I just think there's nuance there.
Okay, let's
at least be fair
let's
to the
even
nuance.
zoom in on who I think is maybe the best counter argument for this, which is maybe like a Huberman or a Ferriss.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of the Huberman podcast specifically is Huberman's original thoughts and research?
Huberman has a lab. Huberman's doing work. Huberman does bring original ideas. I don't think Huberman is a good example. A better example would be like Tim Ferriss or something.
No, but I'm trying to say like Huberman is probably, I think, the best thing I could do to steelman this.
I know.
And
but
I would argue
I don't
that
think this can be.
the vast majority of Huberman's pod is him.
Huberman does many long-form monologue podcasts of him presenting new information.
Research,
Well,
right?
every scientist is that. Every scientist, even that doesn't make sense because it's like saying like, well, no, only a scientist who has like purely original ideas should be valued. That's not a scientist. A scientist is someone that does meta-analyses, brings in information into their. Peter Attia is constantly doing that. What's the difference between Peter Attia? Oh, I value Peter Attia higher than Andrew Huberman. Fine, I do too. That's fine. But like, I don't think that's a good steal.
Would you not agree that Andrew Huberman is primarily an aggregator and filtering mechanism?
In his role as a podcaster.
Yes.
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 So
And my point is that
where I
he
agree
is
with the problem
Okay.
is that these people serve as a circle jerk for a certain select few intellectuals. That's the problem, is that they want to interview the people that already have a platform and that have something to say. And so what's happening is we're getting a few slivers of reality driven by a few handful of people all at the same time constantly. So then suddenly something like cold exposure therapy and ice baths becomes like prominent in the culture because that is what these people in this one circle jerk are talking about. And then they got the book launch and then they want to go on each other's podcasts to do the interviews to promote their book. So I agree that it's a problem, but I just don't think we should be like lumping them together too heavily. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, but I'm not even okay. Like I get not wanting to lump them together. That's fine. But like my purpose in pointing out Huberman was like he was probably like the best case scenario of everything, right? Like Huberman versus like Theo Vaughn or somebody else or Rogan. Like
First of all,
Rogan
I
is
love
not
Theo
doing
Von.
anything, right?
I do too.
I love.
No, I love Theo Vaughn too. But like all these pods, right? They are sort of aggregators, filtering mechanisms for other stuff. Like
Think about their incentive. Downloads.
correct.
So they're going to bring on the people that are going to drive downloads, and those people are going to drive a particular worldview. And then that worldview is going to permeate itself and become the culture.
But is this
That's
not?
the next chapter
But
of
is
this
this
thesis,
not
right?
problematic?
You guys, Nick has held his
see it.
take for a while.
I don't see how it's different.
Sorry.
I don't see how it's different than. I don't see how it's worse than the old media. It's better than the old
Well,
media.
hold. We're not saying if it's worse or better yet.
I'm just saying that, like, my main beef with this is like this concept is not novel at all. Like all he's saying is that the content creators hold information power over the rest of us, which is no different than the mainstream media as we know it now, and is no different than it was 20 years ago when there were 3 main stations and you watch Walter Cronkite and, you know, Brokaw and Rather, and those are the people that like filtered your information for you. Like, how is this any different than any other media mechanism that we've been experienced to before? So it just doesn't seem like a novel concept.
No, you guys are missing. I think you're missing the point. The point isn't necessarily that like, oh, like this is the same thing. Like the point is that we all walk around, I think, and maybe I'm just going to talk about myself here, but I walk around with this sort of like self-assured swagger that like, oh, I listen to all this info, and you normies or you're my mom or whatever, like
Dumbs.
you're dumb. Like I'm plugged into this new way of thinking and you're not. And then I think I zoom out and I think, okay, everything that my parents believe and everything that they're plugged into, at one point in their life, what they did, like they probably plugged into some sort of like counterculture new thing, and it was probably good and useful, and it served like this like purpose to like break out of this mold. But then over time, it just kind of like ossified, became dominant, and it like wasn't that useful anymore. And then it became like a bubble, and then it became like not that useful.
I don't believe you believe that. I believe you have the self-awareness to know
that this person is filtering information on my behalf.
You know that you're living in a bubble.
This was
Come
like
on, you're a smart guy.
No, it took
Like,
this 40-minute video for Steven to realize.
You believe you knew that there's a podcast circuit, and that's a sliver of reality. Reality cannot be used as a word without quotes
I think
around
everybody
it.
on
It's your
this,
version
I
of
think
reality.
everybody on this podcast like over indexes on their version of reality. I think we are all propagandized to a degree.
It's a better version of reality.
Yeah,
that's all it is. And we all know that. Every smart person knows.
Maybe.
Look, Nick just described like the 3 people that were the anchors that were incentivized by bad motives and like external money that was driving who they should interview. These are independent journalists, so it's better.
Yes.
There's more of them, so it's better, and it's just a different, better, bigger bubble.
And they're
I know that. You know that. If I know that, you know that.
And they're more exposed. Like there's a 2-way street of conversations of other experts who could refute them. Like I know that I'm listening to someone who's filtering information before me, and I choose that person because it's better than my mom doing it or some rando off the street. Like over time, you build a relationship with this person, and over time, you might try stuff they recommend and be like, oh, that worked for me. I might rely on this person for more stuff until it doesn't work for me. And then at that point, I start to like maybe not rely on them so much. And so I just don't, that was another point I want to make is that, yes, it is the same, but it's also better. Like, I think this is a better version of a filter that you know, we now have. And it seems optimal.
A human being can't exist without these filters. We've talked about this topic on this podcast many times. We rely on these filters and each other to filter information because it's impossible otherwise.
Too much. Yeah.
It's too much.
And are we in an echo chamber? For sure.
For sure.
Yeah, like everyone's in their own echo chamber, especially online. So like, I think like I accept the argument. I give it low points for novelty, but like I accept his argument. I generally agree with what he's saying. I just don't understand the severity of it. And I think especially listeners to this podcast, like go into these things with a little more self-awareness that like, okay, there's a little bias filter and a bias, knob I need to turn on this information. And
his argument, we landed in the same place.
Yeah.
I couldn't take the rest as seriously because of this awareness and my position on the first core part.
Do you want to go to the second point? Because this is where it becomes more severe.
But all I wanted to say is like,
I kind of have something to say about
all right,
the first
get in there,
please,
Eric.
please. But it's difficult to. It's like anyone who has a thesis. You have the foundation of the thesis, and if I can't stand on the foundation firmly, it's very difficult to take the rest. I can work with the rest, but I have to rely on the foundation. And all I'm saying is like, I think that he's speaking to a person who wasn't aware of his foundational argument.
Oh, I disagree completely. I think he's speaking to like you and me.
I want to hear Eric's take.
Okay.
Well, my take is on the aggregator component of it. Like that these guys aren't necessarily like coming with original thought and stuff. And I don't necessarily refute it. I just think it's probably okay. and like we create content, the four of us, and I think we have a lot of original thought. You know, like original thought is something that I would say is like if you're looking backwards and you're just like repeating some like what has happened or what other people have said, that's like quite easy to make content about. You know, like we make content, it's like quite easy to be like, hey, look at this tweet, look at this. Like it's hard to have an original thought to be like, because of this, then what? I think that's very hard. And like when people do that, they step out and they're not always right. I think this guy is a pretty good example of that, because in this video, he does the first half of the video saying, here's what's happened and here's what I think will happen next. I think he did a pretty poor job of forecasting the future. But like when you do that, it's just often
Can we move on to point 2? Because like we're never going to get to point 4 if we don't at least get to point 2. Okay, so then in his second part, he talks about perception versus reality in business and in politics. So he kind of extends this concept of reflexivity, and he talks about figures like Trump, Musk, Mark Cuban are particular things where perception that Trump is a good businessman, when he references, in fact, he had several cases of businesses going bankrupt or failing. But we still have this because of The Apprentice. We still have this concept of him being a good businessman. He then goes on to Musk, and he uses evidence of government subsidies that really built up his business. He talks about Cuban, who just happened to top tick the NASDAQ and sell his company for billions of dollars and has yet to do anything actually substantive. And he cites Shark Tank as an example that all those investments have actually not been good. But yet we still hold these three people as good. And again, this is the author's opinion, not mine. Yeah. But he still presents these people. We perceive these people as good businessmen, even though there's evidence to say that they are not. He says the ability to control public perception is as valuable than business acumen. And I think he starts to go into, well, now these people are entering politics, and he's kind of starting to get into the argument of like, okay, now the media and the government are merging into one. Did I succinctly hit all the notes you like?
Yeah, I think you jumped a little bit on the last one.
I think I did too.
But yeah, I mean, this ties into the first point. This idea basically that something about the modern world has sort of put like a premium on just sort of the underlying reflexity of like media versus like accomplishing things. And truth becomes this thing that is just sort of defined by the prominence of what you're saying and who you're saying it. You create these like, sure, you start under the premise that like you're filtering and this is good. Like we have people like filtering the complex world of information, right? But then a whole network of this develops, and then you have like the illusion that you're listening to like 100 different people. It's all the same thing. They interview each other, and then pretty soon you think that, yeah, sure, you're like a self-aware person. You think you're kind of looking at this with like listening with a discerning ear, but in reality, it's very hard to avoid sort of getting your perception warped. And he points to Trump as a good example of this, right? Because Trump was, by all accounts, like a failed businessman who still like leveraged the perception that he was a good businessman into The Apprentice, which was a successful show, which basically like ended in him being the president, right? And he cites Cuban, who top ticked the .com bubble and basically leveraged that into Shark Tank and this whole perception that he's a successful businessman, but like, is he? And then he goes all the way to Elon. Like Elon, like we like Elon here, right? You know, I've obviously been skeptical of Elon in the past, and I think there's some skepticism warranted there. But like, what did Elon do with Tesla? Like, well, he basically leveraged media to drive the stock price, and then used the stock price to sort of make the company do something. He didn't make the company do something, and then he kind of worked it the other way. So I think the question there is that this questioning of like, what is the base reality we live in these days? Like, is it a reality that is like, is the primary driver of reality and success in the modern world your ability to enact like real change and drive real value? Or does the modern world just simply reward your ability to generate the perception of value? And that's what's most important. You generate the perception of value, and then you maybe come back afterwards and funnel that into trying to create real value, or maybe you don't even. Maybe you just are continually just playing the perception game.
I mean, I agree that like for some aspirations and goals, the perception is what matters most. That you are this like, I mean, there's like a million of these people selling courses online, you know, like basically posting rented cars and screenshots of revenue and not their profit. And in the cases like that, yeah, the perception is more important than their actual business success. And in cases where you want public fame and maybe you want power at some point, perception is the actual thing that you need to accomplish over the actual, end result or business success. If you came to me and said, hey, who's a better entrepreneur, Donald Trump or Mark Cuban, or like the million of people in our cohort that we know that like we see them like in front of us, like make good business decisions, significantly grow the company, like start things from scratch, I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I mean, these guys did create billions of dollars, but like I know a lot of good entrepreneurs who started stuff from scratch, you know, like Toby from Shopify, right? Like who's a better entrepreneur? I could argue that guy is one of the best entrepreneurs out there. So I don't know. I guess I kind of see his point that like in some cases that is the goal, is the perception, not the actual thing. And
well, the perception thing probably started like if you look at like the old way of entrepreneurship and value creation, it was the Warren Buffett style like value investor. And I think the internet was actually the catalyst that changed that, because then you had a new marketing and media arm that didn't exist before with social media. Obviously, social media came much later than the internet, but in general, even a blog post could have changed the trajectory of your company to create more of a perception game rather than like a press release in a newspaper that didn't have the same impact. So like the internet was probably a defining moment in the change, and we've probably seen this. I mean, I'm kind of looking at you, Eric, if like, is this true? I don't know. I'm just like feeling this out in the moment that like the things really did start to change from the value investor era to the Elon Musk era because of the internet for a big reason. And like you could use that to your advantage in ways that you couldn't before.
Perhaps. I think this one, I think Steven's right. I think the author of this video is correct, where like like edifying your position in other people's minds is what becomes valuable. Like it's like value is not just inherent and objective. It's like how people perceive it, and I think that's probably always been the case. It's probably
Just more now.
easier to like
Manipulate.
proliferate now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like one of the key underlying bottom lines of what he's saying is that like we talk a lot about how we talk a lot about Soros and the concept of reflexivity in the world of investing, and we invest in crypto and meme coins and these things. Like they don't have like inherent tangible value or cash flows. They have reflexivity. The perception of value drives more people to buy them, which drives more perception of value, which drives more people, right? We're familiar with this, but what he's saying is that I think the very nature of reality and truth itself is also not grounded in fundamentals. Like that is in and of itself reflexive, and I think that is like the main takeaway of what he's saying here.
I don't think
That's the danger.
I don't think these two things are necessarily at odds or exclusive. I think you can like have fundamentals and also see reflexivity. I think like having good fundamentals is a good starting point to like allow reflexivity to flourish.
One example might be an amazing investor is an amazing investor, and over time he posts amazing returns to the point where like anytime he invests in anything, everyone just buys it and it goes up, and he sees this reflexivity of his own success, like, or her success put back to her. Like that's a good example. But I agree. I think this point is like the danger of what you're saying, that the base reality is kind of changing underneath us.
Yeah, like what matters isn't so much like doing fundamental things to change base reality. What matters, what is rewarded in the modern world, is to simply just change the perception of base reality, and through properties of reflexivity to just have that become adopted.
To convince everyone that you can change the climate, not actually to stop
Yeah.
climate change, for example.
Is like the big risk then? It's not like fundamentalism would be like what was said, and we judge that based on its merits, and then the risk is that reflexivity becomes like who said it, and then we judge it based on the merits of who said it.
It's kind of like
Or how many other people are repeating it.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, these things two together like kind of can be turned into weaponized things. So
Yeah.
let's move on to the third point. So the first 2 points, he talks about, okay, this is like the setup of what has happened so far. And I think we generally agree with it. And then he kind of goes into what a future of what might happen because of this. So he goes on to talk about that. Let me see here.
You're skipping over Trump and Elon, right?
Well, you're talking about how he's talking about media and tech and politics are now merging.
Yes, which is I think like a huge crux of this. But before you go on to the
Oh, yeah.
financial endpoint,
Yeah. What did I?
probably.
Yeah. Exactly. So he starts mentioning a larger structural shift in governance where media, tech, and politics merge to control narratives. His supporting points are that the state and the media are increasingly intertwined. You could mention the FBI involvement with Twitter, government narratives during COVID, but most importantly now, he talks about Musk's acquisition of Twitter is framed as a strategic move to influence political discourse, which we just mentioned is one of the greatest trades of all time, and I think we agree that it achieved him significant political discourse influence. Okay, let's stop there before he talks about what his jump in terms of like the economic things. But I think there's probably nothing to
No arguments.
no. There's no argument against that, right? Like obviously, Elon bought Twitter, whether he did it for like a future play on, political discourse influence or not. Regardless, it has awarded that, and he is literally in the West Wing right now.
Yeah. I mean, there was another sub-thread in this, which is sort of like, okay, you have these two versions of the world, right? One is where you have this like hyper pure capitalist model, right? Where the thing that you strive to do and the thing that is most rewarded is to sort of build a product that drives value and people purchase the product from you and you're rewarded for creating good products, right? And the other extreme is like you get in these sort of corrupt systems where the product doesn't matter that much. What actually matters is like your proximity to power. Like the more corrupt the market becomes, the more of these kind of like structures stand in the way of like you delivering products to people. The less you building a good product matters, and the more your proximity to power matters, right? And all of the sort of most corrupt governments throughout history and governments are right, especially before they collapse, they get into this phase where like building the product doesn't matter anymore. You just want to be close to power, proximity to power. And he talks about how Elon's like purchasing of Twitter, right, is this sort of kind of brilliant gambit because he was building Tesla already basically not entirely on the back of like building a good product. Like it was mostly driven on the back of government subsidies. It was driven on the back of these clean energy subsidies.
Definitely helped.
Yeah, and like when he saw these things drying up, when he saw that these were mainly a product of the left was turning on him. You had Lorena Gonzalez and Carol and California tell him to go fuck yourself, and he said message received and left. I have wondered very frequently in the last year or two, like how much of what Elon is doing with his like whole like woke crusade and shit, like you want to buy into it because it's like, oh, like I believe these things and it feels good and the world's smartest man is on my side. But like how much of that is like, does he really believe that? Or is he smart? Is he good at playing the game? Did he just know what he had to do to like play in with the other side, to capture the other side? Does he recognize that it's all just a proximity to power game? It's not a product game. And everything he's doing now is just like recognizing that there's been this realignment and strategically realigning himself with the other side.
Like it was politics all the way down.
Yes.
Totally. I mean, he probably had a little bit of both along the way. Probably was not even like super clear to him. He probably thinks he believes it and thinks it's beneficial for himself. The Democrats definitely fumbled the bag because he could have been with them. But I think he took a typical play out of the power playbook, which is like, okay, now I need to acquire a portion of the media. I mean, Jeff Bezos acquired the Washington Post. Like historically, you see these like titans of industry, but like now I need a piece of the media to like control the narrative. And Bezos, to his credit, hasn't really like put any pressures on like the Washington Post. Elon has certainly put his own fingerprint on Twitter and uses it as his personal megaphone. So
yeah, it's a gigantic pro-Trump algo right now.
Yeah,
right?
I think you assume that he did it for self-gain and kind of move on and like amazing trade, amazing power play.
I think a lot of people are okay with that too because they just perceive the old world accurately as being like wildly unfair in the other direction. So they see this like kind of dictatorial bent like in the other way, and they just sort of view it as this like counterbalancing force, and they're like, okay.
Pretty good fundamentals though
fine.
for Elon, like with like the Cuban example and like the Shark Tank thing. None of those investments succeeded. Elon created the biggest. You can come by. He created like the best selling car on earth. He's catching rockets out of the sky. Like this is reflexivity gone right.
And in particular about it morphing with governance, like he has the 1-2 punch. He has the media and he has money. So basically when some politician doesn't do what he likes, he says, I got the megaphone and also I'll fund, you to get primaried in the next election, for example. Okay. Are you ready for the next stage of the argument?
Yeah, sure.
Or are you not fulfilled yet?
I mean, I could talk about this for hours. So you probably
Okay, so
guessed it.
this is where I personally got a little lost. So you might have to help me here. So he talks about, okay, now...
Oh, wait. I remember
Yeah.
a thing I wanted to talk about in this because Alex speaks about the sort of inevitable merging of like the state and media, and basically says like this is already underway, and he even goes as far as to say like it is useless to fight this. Like, you can't even fight it.
No,
It's
you can't.
over.
I mean, Elon and Trump just did an interview together, like as a one unit.
So you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's 100% what has just happened.
I mean, that's scary, right?
It is.
Well, yeah, depending on
Depending on the side and whether you like them.
yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's
Pretty
not-
much.
That's not good,
No,
right?
it's not.
That's not a good outcome. Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, yeah, this structure sucks, but as long as the guy I like is like holding the gun and pointing it at the other people, it's fine.
executive of all types across every country has some sort of preference for their source of media and propaganda that they would like to propagate and proliferate. That's always, they're tied together like this.
And this
Always.
guy, Good Alexander, even mentions, he's like, well, you could create an alternative to Twitter where like you don't have to be on Twitter and like get the Elon propaganda and create an alternative. He's like, I was actually one of the founding members of Blue, whatever that's
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. And he's like, and we had this like noble aim. And it turns out Blue Sky just wanted to create fucking Twitter, but for the left.
Yeah, look, the most important thing is that there is a free press, though. Like, regardless of the preference of the government and how in bed it gets with the version of media that it prefers, we need a free press that is willing to challenge the powers that be.
Do you think we have a free press?
That's a deep question.
That's why I asked you.
I mean,
That's,
I can
think
freely
about that.
publish an article on Substack.
Like, the freest press in the world, yes.
Freest press of all
We
time.
have a free press in the sense that like
Relatively
you publish
speaking,
stuff and you won't
no
go to
question.
jail, right?
We take that for granted, like, we couldn't even believe.
That's base one, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like we've like evolved beyond that in a particular way, right? Like there are
Well, we want
these
the best version. We're the U.S. Whatever the country that has the most freedom is always going to want to create the
But
best.
the
version.
press like doesn't seem to be free in that there seem to be these like power structures like in the darkness where like you're not going to go to jail if you publish particular things, but like you're expected to write about certain
love
things,
your
not write about certain
I love
things.
your perspective. That's a perspective of that someone should have in the freest society to continuously create change toward more freedom. Like that's what we should be.
It is probably
But
the
it is the
freest.
freest.
It's probably the freest today, but I'm thinking it's probably the freest it's ever been of all
Oh,
time.
it definitely is, of course. Because that also only moves in one direction for the most part over time.
Okay, what if I alter it a little bit? I'm like, the freest part of it has ever been is because Elon bought Twitter and said free speech is now free. You can continue to do that. But that same guy is sitting next to the president and actually potentially controls how the algorithm promotes or demotes, certain posts. Like, I guess I could kind of see where he's going, like the dark side of this very easily, where I'm like, well, if this is the free speech platform, primarily the only one that we have with the largest mass distribution, that it's going to be tough for another competitor outside of Facebook to kind of replicate.
No, because I'm really optimistic in that regard, because like we're still relying on like the 2010s era companies. These companies are 15 years old, many of them over 20. There's innovation coming. We're going to be fine in terms of like counterculture movements and free press and continuing to proliferate new ideas. Like Twitter rebranding to X and being in control of Elon is fine. That's great. And you could argue that it's not free, and many people do. And I can totally see examples of how it's not free, and there's a lot of bias at play. But it'll be fine. If it becomes like some sort of echo chamber, which it probably already is, there will be some sort of other platform.
Yeah, there's always alternatives.
There's always alternatives.
We are shackled by the feed and the algorithm. We are, but it doesn't mean that we are
It's the only game in town.
limited to that. Yeah.
Yeah, as the moment it's no longer feeling good, innovation will show up, because that's just what this system is designed to do. But I understand the deeper point that he was making. I know where he was going with the dangers.
I mean, we kind of talked
there
about
are
this, right? And the
dangers.
trading the bureaucracy for the technocracy. This is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I get, like, what is more decentralized at a nationwide level? Like a nation where everybody in the nation gets their news from like 12,000 local papers, or a nation where everybody gets their news from like 1 to 3 social media networks that give like the illusion of having like a broad spectrum of like voices or whatever, but in reality you're just like on.
Oh, those 12,000 local newspapers are also an illusion of being a distributed platform.
I get that you've
Okay.
got like
Sorry.
like obviously like you had like the Sinclair broadcasting thing.
I
You
straw
had
man
people
you,
buy
sorry.
up all these things, right? But like I'm saying, like we were at a point where everything was like actually quite decentralized. Like I would argue that things were more decentralized like 100 years ago, because you just had a bunch of independently owned local papers, and then people started buying up them in conglomerates.
It was
and then,
forced by the physical nature of things, right?
yeah, which is kind of one of the reasons that like
Lack of
physical
internet.
like paper ballot voting might always be better than like digital voting, right? Like I don't know if it's a given that like going further into the digital realm is going to produce like more decentralized utopian results in the end. That's like kind of the thing I'm questioning.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a given. There's
So-
something about the analog world that is better in some
There are
ways
no
for that.
givens. It's always a fight. You know?
All right. Well, I want to keep progressing us along. So we understand this, the risk of having, the media and politics and governance in the same house. He goes on to kind of like predict the future a little bit economically, and he says the U.S. faces an unstoppable debt crisis where future governments will either impose fiscal austerity or let inflation spiral. If austerity happens, the stock market crashes, and maybe say if inflation happens, we have like some kind of inflationary crisis. But the point is that the government leans on the propaganda to maintain control. The failure of the legacy media opens up opportunities for figures like Musk and Trump to become gatekeepers of the truth. So I'll be honest, this is where he kind of lost me.
Yeah.
Because he's saying there's like two outcomes. Both end in like massive recession,
Collapse.
collapse.
Okay, do you agree with like the first
And
fork
does
in
he
the
know
road?
that Jack is Satoshi?
Yeah. Walk me through this.
Do you agree with the first fork in the road he proposes, where it's just like, look, it's like austerity or printing and wild inflation?
So far, we've found that it's neither. It's just this.
No, there's
other-
No, it's
There's
just-
such a-
It's inflation. I mean,
I don't know. I think there's a modal outcome where like there's a old man Powell there just turning the knobs ever so slightly, easing
there's
to
a
tightening.
middle way.
well, hold on. Like inflation, it's like what we're talking about here is like severity. Like inflation is wild. If you zoom out, like the purchasing power is down like 99%. So like, I think the answer is inflation. It's just like a matter of moderating it. And I don't think austerity is ever going to happen.
Right.
And that's what he continues for 20 minutes on the path of austerity, which I don't think is ever going to happen.
But you're sort of like putting the idea out that like moderate inflation is an option, and I think he's sort of arguing that like, okay, actually there is no moderate inflation button. There's like inflation goes wildly out of control, or we like go.
Yeah, it's like
austerity.
a Balaji argument.
Yeah, it's similar. It's for sure.
He's like,
it's for sure
you can
similar.
try, but it's futile.
I do wonder sometimes like how much we are like if we zoom out, we're like definitely these frogs in boiling water. And you like zoom out to like the history of the stock market, right? You find these like 30-year periods where the stock market doesn't go up. You're like, holy shit. But then you zoom way out, it doesn't look like anything happened. But like people lived their whole life in that period. So like we're anchored to 5-10 years of our life, and like that becomes like the normalization of how the world is. We're like, of course we can live like this, right? But like maybe we can't. Like maybe we are. Like he talks about how we like you look around and there are all these signs of like everything going off the rails, right? You've got MicroStrategy trading like more volume than the NASDAQ most days. There's a fucking meme coin mania. Like the debt is like completely off the charts. And like we've gotten used to it not breaking anything because it's been fine for like 10 years. But 10 years isn't necessarily like forever. Like maybe it is on the verge of going off the rails. You know?
I'm with Eric. Like, okay, he did focus on this austerity thing. I don't think that's like the most likely outcome, because imagine this: you have a populist president, and he does cut maybe a little too much, and the population freaks out. And Bernanke created this tool called QE, and the government is prone to spend. And you're telling me like once we go into like a little bit of a recession or even a big recession, they're not going to turn on the fucking money printer. The populist president is not going to turn on the money printer to like bring the people back to him and bring the economy back to life.
Okay,
Like,
but he's arguing for what you're saying though.
So
Like,
then
if
let's
I'm
just
gonna-
focus on the inflation component, not the austerity component then, because the austerity component.
okay, so this is where I think it actually gets interesting, where the propaganda could definitely come into play.
I mean, he like game theories this out, right? And if you game theory it out and you believe what he's saying, and like I think there's like legitimate like merit to what he's saying, which is just like, okay, like ultimately the rubber does meet the road. Like there's like a finite amount of money in the world. There's a finite amount of value being created. There's a finite amount of humans. There's like an ever expanding like amount of debt. Like at a certain point in time, you have to pick one of these paths. And like he sort of game theories it out where it's like, okay, it is optimal for his thesis is that like Trump will basically engineer the crash, and the engineer the crash sooner or later. He says he's very, very bearish risk assets. I mean, this is the thing we've talked about. Like, why wouldn't you engineer the crash early on? I think what he offers some like kind of fear around is the idea that like, oh, I can engineer the crash and then recover from it and everything's hunky dory. And we don't get like dictator AOC in 4 years. It's like where things kind of really fucking go off the rails. And I think that's where so you don't buy into the idea that like there's an inevitable path you have to choose, and the game theory suggests that you may as well just like pull the plug like sooner rather than later, avoid midterms, like maybe get things back on track.
I mean, I'm still not even convinced that he can actually control enough austerity, even if he wants to, that would cause a big enough crash. Like, yes, Doge is doing its thing, right? But like,
crash the market just from tariffs, right? If he wanted to.
yeah, he could, but I don't think that's not like an austerity-driven crash. So, I mean, you know, he's talking within months. You know, he's talking that this crash is going to come, and
Imminent.
I mean, I get the game theory. Like when I game theory it out, I'm like, well, what would I do? Like,
yes, it does make sense if
probably-
he's gonna like, you know, rid us and get, you know, the deficit to 3% of GDP. He probably should just like take the medicine now, as early as possible in his presidency, so he has time to like build it back up. But he, you know, that's a lot of threat, and I don't know if his Republican colleagues are gonna be like, you know, in the Senate and the House are going to be as stoked that he's going down this path. And at some point he will need them to to
It's
bring
not
these
going to
back.
ever outright say like I'm crashing the economy, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. This one's tough to swallow, but let's say he's right. Like, let's say he is right, and the economy will crash due to austerity or inflation. I actually think like Trump having the media in his hands in an inflationary spiral is good. I could totally see like Elon totally promoting war bonds out on Twitter, be like, be a good American and buy bonds.
It fits into the thesis.
Yeah.
Like, they'll try to propagandize you.
Okay, so how about this? Like, Nick, you were mentioning this before. Like, the U.S. has leverage here in like, because we're not just talking about the dollar. This is like a global economy, and like there's other currencies that are failing at even a faster rate. The U.S. has leverage they can pull to like help this Ponzi
Oh,
continue.
what we were talking about before the pod. Yeah. I
we
mean,
can
like,
continue the greatest Ponzi ever created, basically, for a lot longer than this guy's suggesting.
yeah. So you need buyers of bonds if you're in this little inflationary fiasco. The Federal Reserve could certainly buy some, or you could go to like Europe and Saudi Arabia and be like, listen, here's the new deal. We've been providing you defense and security, and we'll continue to guarantee that. But we'd like you to buy, I don't know, maybe a couple $100 billion of these 50-year bonds in exchange for that now. And so that's the new deal. And exchanging security, this like, system where the U.S. essentially polices most of the world,
God,
and
what a Ponzi.
we'll play that game. And in my mind, I think we even all came to this conclusion that like that kind of makes sense. Like, it's never really been done before as like a quid pro quo, but like I'm sure he's thinking about that as like a potential option.
But
And
isn't that still a can kick? Like, even if everything happens, as we say,
Yes.
it's still a can
But
kick,
that's my
right?
point, is that you can kick the can for a
We
lot
might
longer. This
live-
guy's suggesting that it's going to happen in the next 4 years.
We might live in an infinite can kick.
Like, our life might be over by the time the
Yes.
bill comes due.
He is suggesting that the
bill may
the
never
GTO
come due.
thing to do is to crash the economy, and he's suggesting that even if you think there's an 80 to 90% chance that you will be able to pull all the strings to make everything good again, and you're not going to have like dictator AOC in 3 or 4 years, what he's saying is that if you are elite and you have all this capital, you're going to game plan for the 10 to 20% scenario where you are unable to actually kick the can successfully. And in doing so, you're basically going to engineer all this like banking crypto shit.
The end of the can being kicked is the end of the empire.
Exactly.
It's the empire as we know it, yeah.
So like they'll kick it as far as they can until the empire ends, and I take back what I just said, which is that it can be kicked forever because all things come to an end. Like, it will eventually end. America will eventually end as an empire, and it'll break. I don't think it breaks for a long, long time. I really don't
But the
anymore.
but the point of it isn't necessarily like, oh, it's going to break. Like, the point of all of this, like this whole thing, is actually like this kind of weird investment thesis at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it kind of like leads into like buy XRP, which is kind of a weird awkward. Like, it's this very like well thought out, like it's like good, and then it's just like buy bank crypto, and it's like kind of crowbarred together in a way. But like if I read charitably into the thesis again is that like you're not supposed to be sitting here like game planning like, will the empire end or will it not end? That's not even the point. The point is that like even if they think there's a 10% chance the empire ends, they're going to do things to secure their own bags against that scenario.
yeah,
and
can
the
I
things they
provide
do.
that like little domino, because it's actually
Yeah.
quite entertaining.
Yeah, go for it.
I gotta pee.
Okay. So he says, the austerity and debt crisis will drive demand for crypto, but not as a retail investment, but as a wealth escape mechanism for the ultra rich. He says risk assets like stocks will crash under fiscal tightening. The ultra wealthy will seek offshore alternatives, and crypto becomes a key escape route. Switzerland, no longer a reliable safe haven post Credit Suisse collapse. And then he goes on to say that like the only rails that are important are the non kind of current financial rails. That is where your money is safe. If it's in a banking system, anything traditionally as we know it, stocks, real estate, you're fucked. And so the wealthy will then put their wealth on crypto rails and kind of use it as their own like thing.
Escape valve.
Where I get a little confused, I guess, is okay, XRP is one way to put the rails, but like I could easily own Bitcoin. I could easily
Right.
own ETH and just, hopefully hold my wealth in Bitcoin. I mean,
Okay, well, but the thesis, I think, is that there's going to be this like dramatic changing of like banking regulation alongside crypto, and that like Bitcoin doesn't play exactly into the banking
well, how does
regulation.
XRP play into it?
Because it's literally a bank coin.
Yeah, because of the like cross. But
it's-
isn't it holding dollars? I don't understand. Like, aren't you transporting dollars back and forth? So you're still like this dollar denominated asset that then gets torched.
Transporting value across a blockchain outside of Rails. Like I agree.
Okay.
Gets a little hand wavy.
Okay.
It gets a little hand
'Cause
wavy.
I'm okay going along
at
with
the end
this,
of
but like,
it gets a little bit hand wavy. I get everything up to the. I can even grok with the idea that like I get the game theory of wanting to crash everything, and I get the next step where you're like, even if you think there's a 90% chance you will build it all back, you will plan for the 10% where you can't, and they're gonna try to put you in like a concentration camp or something and prosecute you, and you got to get your wealth out, and so you do all this banking regulation / crypto shit to be able to like have fluidity with your wealth and to be able to escape. I could even get to that point. But the XRP one was like, maybe it's explained better somewhere else. I get why it might be a good perp trade. I don't get how it like facilitates the transfer of your wealth, the exit out of the system, which is kind of the crux of this.
Yeah,
the
I mean-
optionality to exit the system.
I mean, he's talking about like total collapse, where like a
I would
dollar
have thought
denominated.
Bitcoin is like the
Yeah, like
Monero.
yeah. If you want
a privacy coin would be very helpful in this scenario. I
I
think.
mean, that is a long there, but it makes sense.
I mean, we say that, but like, fuck, man, it's like you wake up and then like 3 days later, you're like, wow, I can't believe this shit happened in 3 days.
And it is one of those things you should own for that reason, for sure.
Yeah, I have a little bit of Monero now.
I don't, and I probably should. Like there are these plays where like worst case scenario plays. I don't know. It's tough to live in that like worst case scenario mindset. It's tough.
It is, yeah, but you can see how it happens. You can see how they do
I can
like a
definitely see how it
crash.
happens.
It goes kind of awry. There's like he cites the Luigi thing, which like I agree was like kind of scary. Like it was a little scary watching people be like, "Yeah, kill the rich," and like that was like a public accepted
We've
thing.
talked about that many times.
Yeah, so we're not that far away from like a dictator AOC. Like something goes bad, there's like an economic downturn. You have like a strong man rise up from the other side of the political aisle now. We just swing the other way, and then like, what does that world look like? It's probably not a kind world to.
Does this change your portfolio construction in any way?
It does make me want to keep less money like in brokerage accounts. It does make me put more of a premium. I'm just like having stuff like on chain. Like it does make me think that the world is like a little bit maybe closer to like a breakdown than like I am pricing in. Like I
So
try
you
not to be
think
too
it does
doomer.
a better job than Balaji did of like making you realize the vulnerabilities of the system.
Balaji's tweet was just so fucking dumb
No,
on so many levels.
I know.
So I like couldn't get
Well,
past it.
it was. I wouldn't call it dumb. I
It
would
was
just call
dumb. He
it.
called for $1 million Bitcoin in like 6 days.
It
you
was
know?
extravagant and exaggerated to create a point.
But like even his point around like the nuances of the banking collateral and everything, like it didn't really come to pass.
Right.
So it's I don't know. It's like one of those things where there's like some grain of
Was it
truth to it at
directionally
the
correct?
end. Maybe I would give it like loose directional partial credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that aside, like these types of arguments make you think differently about your portfolio construction.
Yeah, like you don't want to be like overweight, like even like stock, right? Because like your stock will go down like 80% if something like this happens, and it'll be fucking crazy. And like you do object, like look, if you kind of zoom out and look at everything that's happened over the few decades, like you can paint a picture where you're like, oh wow, this is like quite the bubble.
Can you
know?
steel man this for me, please?
Steelman what?
Tell me if you were in control and had the power and you wanted to prevent this sort of collapse from happening where you, as the powers that be, needed to funnel your wealth into an escape valve like XRP, which is the thesis here, how you prevent that from happening. If you call that a 10% scenario, how do you prevent that from happening and continue kicking the can down the road?
I mean, my first question would be like, how much time do I have? Because if somebody tells me like you got 4 years, I'm gonna be like, I'm just going out on top as the greatest president of all time. I'm kicking the can.
I do still find the part of his argument that like Trump has this incentive to crash the market. Rather than going back to his original argument, why don't I give everyone the perception that we're like tightening our belts and not
Right, but
actually...
what if there's something you don't know about? Like, what if somebody came in and they're like, Mr. President, you've got like 1 to 2 years, but it's going to happen and it's going to be nuclear. Like, now it's like a weird thing. Like, if you know with 100% certainty that 2 years from now there'll be like a financial Armageddon, your whole legacy is destroyed.
So if
Which
you,
no case exists. Like no
hold
one,
on, like let's just like play out this theory, like I guess for funsies. I was thinking that like if we do have this like nuclear meltdown in like the financial systems globally, I would imagine that like life doesn't move forward, it moves backward. So like the numbers on the screen that you consider your value don't matter whether those are US dollars in your brokerage account or whether those are ripples in your whatever they are. Like life moves backwards. You need like real world things.
I'm just imagining like if this happens, XRP going down 99%.
So we're back to bullets and beans?
I imagine just being able to hold like if you could hold decentralized dollars on chain, you probably do like incredibly well.
Ripples are like valued in dollars. So if the dollar is fucking dead, this thing's
Like
fucking dead.
the point of this isn't to like put your net worth in like Ripple the token for escape. Like the point of this is that like they're going to preemptively do regulatory shit to like reduce like stuff that might like be like a capital control.
So yeah,
which is going to be conducive to the value of these assets.
What he's saying is like the dollars might have different values. The dollar in the financial system has no value. The dollar that is outside the system is like the most valuable. You know, like a premium for it because like we can actually trade it back and forth without big dog government controlling it.
Because you got to think one of the first, like if you go to like a dictator AOC scenario, right? One of the first things they might do if everything goes to hell, they might pull like the Grease playbook, right? Where they just like haircut all the money you had in a bank account. Like what if there's like a billionaire uprising? They're just like every dollar a billionaire has, like all your stocks, everything in a bank account, whatever. Even in Switzerland, we're haircutting it all. You can see why like somebody might want to get ahead of the curve there, maybe enact some sort of regulation that allows them to move money ahead of time, hold stuff like outside of the system, make that like not illegal, like preemptively, just like make sure there's like a sort of digital bunker, a digital financial bunker. I think that is the argument. Like if I'm
would you then like feel comfortable having your digital bunker be stored in like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana as well as Ripple? Like this guy suggests Ripple as like the...
He's not suggesting Ripple, again, he's not suggesting Ripple to store your value. He's saying that a byproduct of what they're going to do to preserve their value will be this coin in advance going to the moon as a result of the stuff they do to preserve their value in the end game. I think the best way to preserve value in this way, like if you could conceive of like a sort of like Bitcoin backed on-chain stable coin that was like outside the realm of like that would be like the best thing. Like imagine you could hold like a stable coin backed by Bitcoin,
but Bitcoin
outside of the system. Nobody can freeze it and it's just dollars. That's probably what you want because we know that in like these like crazy events, the dollar just goes to the moon and everything goes down, like everything. So that would be like the perfect scenario.
How difficult is it to transport like $10 million of gold? Significantly difficult?
10 million? Probably not.
I mean, imagine the value goes up in this scenario of gold.
Well, $10 million of gold is just like this iPhone in this scenario. So
yeah, like a couple bullion. Like
a couple.
It would be hard to get out of the country, but if you're not going to leave the country, like gold in, various denominations sounds like a good thing to have rather than some like, I don't know, dollar stable coin on some random network. I don't know.
God, this pod has become like full like Jim Rickards. Just like get your guns and ammo.
Yeah, we do need guns and ammo actually. I just watched the Palmer Luckey interview on the Sean Ryan show. It's
Oh,
like,
that was a good interview.
holy shit, we're gonna talk about this in the podcast.
Bro,
so,
I actually meant to.
so guys, just
note
cue
that
it
to
up.
talk about
It's like a 3.5 hour long one. It's pure entertainment. It's a great
super
entrepreneur story.
fascinating.
Give it a week or two to like get it through. It took me like 5 days.
It's a must watch.
It's just like
Yeah,
pure
it's good.
entertainment and also like crazy technology, crazy stories, wild stories of him, getting bought by Facebook or even starting in his garage, getting fired by Facebook, the whole media thing that happened from it.
But culminating in the idea that the military is creating advanced AI weapons that can control.
Yeah, and he
all of
himself
us.
has like 450 guns or something. Like he owns a massive artillery. And so when we talked about buying guns and ammo, I was like, that guy's ready.
I would feel a lot better if I had 450 guns.
Yeah.
Start with one, bro.
Yeah. It just seems so useless,
To start,
Just one. What am I gonna do?
one is better than none.
That's fair.
I watched the Alexander Good video too. This is Christopher up there with Balaji on the ability to string together these big concepts and think about the future that is coming. Alan Bryce says, haha, I was thinking the Grease playbook. We're all going to dance fight.
I would lose.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen you with a few drinks. Yeah.
You guys still like the robot?
All right. I think that was like a good, like, intellectual
Apocalypse
journey.
episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun talking about the end of the world.
It
with you
did
guys.
weave in a bunch of other stuff. Financial repression we've talked about. And
Yeah.
all kinds of-
Satoshi, guys. Satoshi.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah, I still can't get over it. I need to
was
talk about
big.
it more. Yeah.
Well, let's go after hours.
Okay, let's go. All right, guys, this has been fun. Everyone, thanks for the chat, for sticking with us for the whole pod. Like the video if you haven't already.
Come on,
It
like
really helps.
the video.
Yeah, smash it. Do us a favor. Gentleman's handshake.
Smash the like
Gentle-
button, like and subscribe.
There are some gentle women in the audience as well, I know. And so thank you for joining. And so gentle women's handshake. Please like the video. Yeah, we'll be back next week, Wednesday at 5 p.m. PST on YouTube. Come join us again. It's been a lot of fun this week. And we will see you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Later.